Most ambitious entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders share a quiet frustration. They're hustling harder than ever, yet growth feels slower, more fragile, and far less sustainable. Many find themselves trapped, performing for the applause of a noisy marketplace rather than building quietly and strategically toward lasting success. This book, Be Calm and Win, Work Hard in Silence, challenges you to step away from the performance theater that exhausts most entrepreneurs. Instead, it offers a proven pathway, one that replaces noise with results and hustle with strategic calm. Drawing insights from quiet achievers like Warren Buffett and Ingvar Kamprad, you'll learn how silent execution, invisible systems, and patient compounding create the kind of competitive advantage that public hustle simply can't match. Through clear frameworks and practical strategies, you'll discover how to protect your most valuable asset, your attention, and leverage it to multiply results without burning out. In the pages ahead, you'll discover a new way to approach your work, one where silent execution loops quietly enhance your effectiveness, and deep work becomes a protected asset that fuels extraordinary productivity. You'll learn to build invisible systems that keep your business growing even while you rest, and cultivate a strategic calm that transforms high-pressure situations into precise, impactful actions. Ultimately, you'll move past the common trap of mistaking mere activity for real achievement, enabling you to scale your business sustainably and strategically. Ultimately, Be Calm and Win is about changing the rules of the game. It's for those who know they have more to offer and who understand that the loudest voices rarely represent the strongest results. If you're ready to grow faster without burnout, quietly outmaneuver your competition, and create a business that compounds in value, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Chapter 1, Quiet Victory. Your phone buzzes. Another notification. Another meeting request. Another urgent message that derails your focus for the next 20 minutes. You're drowning in noise, endless posts, performative hustle, and shallow work that looks like progress but builds nothing lasting. While you're busy broadcasting your plans, your competitors are quietly shipping products that matter. This chapter isn't about working harder. It's about working in silence until your results roar so loud that words become optional. You're about to discover how strategic calm and silent execution create the conditions for unmistakable wins without the theatrics that exhaust most entrepreneurs. The signal-to-noise crisis. The modern entrepreneur faces a brutal paradox. The tools meant to accelerate success often sabotage it. Social media promises connection but delivers distraction. Transparency becomes performance theater. Public accountability morphs into public anxiety. Consider this. 70% of small businesses with documented processes grow faster and more profitably than those running on heroics and hope. Yet most founders spend more time talking about their systems than building them. They're optimizing for applause, not assets. The problem runs deeper than poor time management. When you announce every move, you invite judgment before proof exists. When you chase vanity metrics, likes, follows, comments, you train your brain to value visibility over value creation. Your attention, the scarcest resource you possess, gets auctioned to the highest bidder, whoever screams loudest. Warren Buffett understood this decades ago. While other investors chased headlines, he quietly compounded wealth through patient, private decision-making. His annual letters became legendary, not because he posted daily updates, but because he spoke only when he had something worth saying. Results first, narrative second. This isn't about becoming a hermit. It's about recognizing that your noise-to-work ratio determines your trajectory. High noise, low work equals stagnation disguised as activity. Low noise, high work equals compounding that looks like magic to outsiders. The shallow work epidemic. Walk into any modern office and witness the epidemic. People frantically busy but rarely productive. Meetings multiply like viruses. Notifications fragment focus into useless micro-moments. Always on becomes the badge of honor for the perpetually overwhelmed. The science is clear. Context switching taxes your working memory. Even brief interruptions create attention residue that lingers long after the distraction ends. Your brain needs 23 minutes to fully refocus after an interruption. Most knowledge workers get interrupted every 11 minutes. Do the math, you're operating at a cognitive deficit all day. But here's what's worse. Shallow work masquerades as progress. Responding to emails feels productive. Attending meetings creates the illusion of importance. Posting updates mimics forward momentum. Meanwhile, the deep work that builds defensible assets, the kind that creates pricing power and competitive moats, never happens. Ingvar Kamprad, founder of IKEA, built a global empire through relentless focus on operational excellence, not publicity stunts. He gave rare interviews, avoided the spotlight, and let standardized systems do the talking. While competitors chased press coverage, IKEA quietly revolutionized furniture retail through process innovation and cost discipline. The pattern repeats across industries. The most successful operators work in silence until their results demand attention. The anxiety engine of public commitments. Public commitments create a psychological trap. When you announce goals publicly, your brain releases dopamine as if you've already achieved them. The announcement becomes a substitute for accomplishment. Worse, fear of public failure distorts your decision-making, leading to scope creep as you chase approval instead of outcomes. Amancio Ortega, founder of Zara, exemplifies the opposite approach. One of the world's richest individuals, he's given fewer interviews than most startup founders give in a month. Instead of talking about fast fashion, he built the systems that defined it. Rapid iteration, supply chain excellence, and customer feedback loops, all developed in private, tested quietly, then scaled globally. This is strategic calm in action, pressure converted into precision. When you're not performing for an audience, you can focus on what actually moves the needle. Your energy flows into execution, not explanation. The physiological benefits are real. Calm states activate your parasympathetic nervous system, improving working memory and executive function. Scattered arousal, the kind triggered by constant notifications and social pressure, degrades cognitive performance. You literally think better when you work quieter. The compounding power of stealth. Here's what most entrepreneurs miss. Compounding is nonlinear. The early stages look flat, boring, even futile. That's where most people quit. They need external validation to continue, so they announce their progress, invite opinions, and dilute their focus. Smart operators understand that silence preserves optionality. When you work privately, you can pivot without explaining yourself to critics. You can kill bad ideas without public embarrassment. You can iterate rapidly without the drag of external expectations. Satya Nadella transformed Microsoft not through grand announcements, but through quiet, systematic culture change. He shifted the company from know-it-all to learn-it-all, rebuilt cloud infrastructure, and delivered results before crafting the narrative. When he finally spoke publicly about the transformation, the proof was undeniable. Stock price, market share, and employee satisfaction had all multiplied. This is the patience dividend. When cumulative assets flip from addition to multiplication, your position becomes unassailable. But only if you resist the temptation to celebrate too early. The architecture of quiet victory. The solution isn't to disappear entirely. It's to architect a system that maximizes signal while minimizing noise. This book gives you that architecture through 8 interconnected principles. Strategic calm stabilizes your operating system so you can think clearly under pressure. Deep work protects your attention like capital, ensuring your best hours go to your best work. Silent execution runs tight build-measure-learn loops without the drag of public scrutiny. Invisible systems codify your wins so success becomes policy, not luck. Patient power teaches you to delay recognition until your moat exists. Outcome signals replace hype with evidence, letting results do your marketing. Understated presence maintains just enough visibility to be chosen without being consumed by audience maintenance. Each principle builds on the previous one. You can't execute silently until you've achieved strategic calm. You can't build invisible systems without first protecting deep work time. You can't signal outcomes until you've developed the patience to create them. The sequence matters because state drives performance. When you're calm, you make better decisions. When you protect your attention, you create valuable assets. When you work privately, you iterate faster. When you systemize wins, you compound gains. When you delay recognition, you build defensible moats. When you signal outcomes, you attract premium opportunities. When you maintain understated presence, you preserve the focus that created success in the first place. Winners versus losers, the mindset divide. The difference between winners and losers in this game isn't talent or luck, it's philosophy. Winners are quiet, patient, measured. They prioritize shipping over sharing, systems over slogans, proof over promises. They understand that attention is finite and treat it like the precious resource it is. Losers are loud, impulsive, approval-seeking. They confuse activity with achievement, visibility with value, chaos with creativity. They burn through attention like it's unlimited and wonder why their results never match their effort. Consider the contrast. While most entrepreneurs are posting about their journey, winners are building assets that compound. While others are networking at conferences, winners are systematizing their operations. While the crowd is debating strategies on social media, winners are testing them in private. This isn't about being antisocial, it's about being strategic with your most valuable resources: time, attention, and energy. Every minute spent performing for an audience is a minute not spent building something that matters. The proof is in the pattern. The evidence spans decades and industries. Jim Simons built the most successful hedge fund in history through secrecy and systematic thinking. His Renaissance technologies delivered 66% annual returns for 3 decades while revealing almost nothing about their methods. Privacy became their competitive edge. Reed Hastings transformed Netflix from a DVD-by-mail service to a streaming giant through quiet iteration and bold bets. Instead of announcing every strategic shift, he tested hypotheses privately, gathered data, then moved decisively. The market learned about Netflix's transformation through results, not press releases. The pattern is consistent. The most successful operators work hard in silence, then let their results do the talking. They understand that premature exposure invites mimicry and distraction. They know that compounding requires patience, and patience requires privacy. Your quiet victory starts now. This book isn't theory, it's a playbook. By the time you finish, you'll have a weekly deep work fortress protecting 7 to 10 hours of undisturbed creation time. You'll run a silent execution loop that ships meaningful assets monthly. You'll operate with a decibel budget that cuts interruptions by 25 to 40%. You'll track progress through a private accountability system that optimizes for outcomes, not optics. The transformation won't happen overnight. Quiet victory is built through small, correct actions repeated consistently over time. But here's what you can expect: fewer emergencies, more inevitability, less reactive churn, more strategic patience, reduced decision fatigue, increased pricing power. Your competitors will keep broadcasting their plans while you're building your moat. They'll chase vanity metrics while you're optimizing for retention and margin. They'll burn out from the performance treadmill while you're compounding gains in silence. The choice is yours. Join the noise or create the signal. Chase applause or build assets. Work hard in public for temporary validation or work hard in silence for permanent results. The next chapter reveals how to install strategic calm as your default operating system, the foundation that makes everything else possible. But first, you need to make a decision. Will you keep performing for an audience that doesn't pay your bills, or will you start building something that speaks for itself? The quiet revolution begins with a single choice. Make it now. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2: Strategic Calm. The boardroom was silent except for the ticking clock. 12 executives sat around the mahogany table, waiting for their CEO to explode. The quarterly numbers were brutal. Market share was bleeding. Competitors were gaining ground. Everyone expected panic, urgency, maybe even heads to roll. Instead, Tim Cook leaned back in his chair, took a measured breath, and asked a single question. What do we know for certain? His voice was steady, almost conversational. No drama, no theatrics, just calm inquiry in the face of crisis. That moment, captured in countless Apple board meetings over the years, reveals something most entrepreneurs never grasp. Strategic calm isn't the absence of pressure. It's pressure converted into precision. While others react, you respond. While they scatter energy, you concentrate it. While they make noise, you make progress. But here's what Cook understood that most don't. Calm isn't a personality trait you're born with. It's an operating system you install. The hidden cost of chaos. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between a saber-toothed tiger and a Slack notification. Both trigger the same fight-or-flight response that floods your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing becomes shallow, your peripheral vision narrows. This response served our ancestors well when facing physical threats. But in the modern knowledge economy, it's cognitive poison. When your sympathetic nervous system is activated, your working memory shrinks. Your ability to see connections between ideas diminishes. Your decision-making becomes impulsive and short-sighted. The research is unambiguous. Anxiety taxes cognition, and you pay the price in mistakes, rework, and missed opportunities. A study of 20,000 executives found that those who maintained calm under pressure made 23% fewer errors and completed complex tasks 31% faster than their reactive counterparts. Yet most entrepreneurs wear stress like a badge of honor. They confuse urgency with importance, chaos with productivity. They believe that if they're not constantly on edge, they're not working hard enough. This is the first myth we need to destroy. Roger Federer understood the alternative. Throughout his 24-year career, he was known not just for his elegant strokes, but for his unshakable composure. While opponents threw rackets and argued with umpires, Federer remained serene. Between points, he followed the same ritual: adjust his strings, take a controlled breath, visualize the next shot. This wasn't natural talent. It was trained behavior. Federer spent years conditioning his nervous system to stay calm under extreme pressure. The result? He won 20 Grand Slam titles and maintained peak performance well into his late 30s, an age when most tennis players have long since retired. The lesson isn't about tennis, it's about state management. Your physiological state determines your cognitive capacity. Control your state and you control your outcomes. The arousal sweet spot. Your brain operates best within a narrow band of arousal, not too high, not too low, but right in the middle. Psychologists call this the optimal arousal zone, and it's where peak performance lives. When arousal is too low, you're sluggish, unfocused, prone to procrastination. Your mind wanders. Simple tasks feel overwhelming. You lack the activation energy to start important work. When arousal is too high, you're scattered, impulsive, reactive. Your attention fragments across multiple inputs. You make hasty decisions you later regret. Complex thinking becomes impossible. But in the sweet spot, that narrow band between under and over arousal, something magical happens. Your focus sharpens. Your thinking becomes clear and systematic. You see patterns and connections that were invisible moments before. Time seems to slow down, giving you space to make deliberate choices. Strategic calm is the practice of staying in this zone regardless of external circumstances. It's not about being emotionless or passive. It's about maintaining the physiological state that enables your best thinking. Think of it like a race car engine. Too little RPM and you stall. Too much and you redline, risking catastrophic failure. The skilled driver finds the optimal range and holds it there, extracting maximum performance without burning out the engine. Your nervous system works the same way. Strategic calm keeps you in the performance zone where great work happens. The discipline of boredom. Here's a truth that will make most entrepreneurs uncomfortable. The secret to extraordinary results is learning to love ordinary moments. While your competitors chase novelty and excitement, you need to fall in love with repetition. The human brain is wired to seek novelty. New experiences trigger dopamine release, creating a chemical reward that feels good in the moment but undermines long-term progress. When you constantly chase the next shiny object, you never develop the deep expertise that creates competitive advantage. Boredom tolerance is the antidote. It's the ability to find satisfaction in doing the same important thing over and over again, getting incrementally better each time. This isn't about mindless repetition. It's about deliberate practice applied to the activities that compound. Consider the daily routine of Maya Angelou, one of the most celebrated writers of the 20th century. Every morning at 6:30 a.m., she would arrive at a small, sparse hotel room she rented specifically for writing. No decorations, no distractions, just a Bible, a thesaurus, a yellow legal pad, and a bottle of sherry. She would write lying down, filling page after page with her distinctive handwriting. When she finished a page, she would read it aloud, editing as she went. This routine never varied. Same time, same place, same process. For decades. The result? 7 autobiographies, dozens of poetry collections, and a literary legacy that influenced millions. Not because she was constantly innovating her process, but because she perfected it through repetition. This is the power of boredom tolerance. When you stop needing every moment to be stimulating, you can focus on the unsexy work that creates lasting value. You can ship consistently instead of sporadically. You can build systems instead of just having ideas. The physiology of performance. Strategic calm isn't just a mental state, it's a physical one. When your parasympathetic nervous system is dominant, your body operates like a finely tuned machine. Your heart rate variability increases, improving your ability to adapt to stress. Your breathing deepens, delivering more oxygen to your brain. Your digestion improves, ensuring steady energy levels throughout the day. Most importantly, your prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for executive function, operates at peak efficiency. This is where strategic thinking happens, where you weigh options, consider consequences, and make the kind of decisions that compound over time. But here's the catch. You can't access this state on demand unless you've trained for it. Just like physical fitness, nervous system regulation requires consistent practice. You need to install specific protocols that shift your physiology from reactive to responsive. The good news? The protocols are simple. The challenge is doing them consistently when everything around you is designed to keep you in a state of chronic activation. The 3-breath reset. The fastest way to shift from reactive to responsive is through controlled breathing. When you're stressed, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid, signaling danger to your nervous system. When you're calm, your breathing is deep and slow, signaling safety. You can hack this feedback loop with a simple protocol, the 3-breath reset. Before any important decision, take 3 controlled breaths. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6. The extended exhale activates your vagus nerve, triggering the relaxation response. This isn't meditation or mindfulness, it's applied physiology. You're using your breath to downregulate your nervous system, creating the internal conditions for clear thinking. The entire process takes less than 30 seconds, but the cognitive benefits last for hours. Tim Cook uses a version of this technique before every major presentation. Warren Buffett has spoken about the importance of breathing space between receiving information and making decisions. Elite performers across industries understand that the quality of your decisions depends on the state you're in when you make them. The 3-breath reset gives you that state on command. Cadence over chaos. Most entrepreneurs operate in constant reaction mode. Email arrives, they respond immediately. Phone rings, they answer. Meeting request comes in, they accept. They mistake responsiveness for productivity, but they're actually training their brain to be scattered and reactive. Strategic calm requires the opposite approach, cadence over chaos. Instead of reacting to inputs as they arrive, you batch similar activities into designated time blocks. This reduces context switching, the cognitive tax you pay every time you shift between different types of work. Your ideal day has rhythm and structure. Morning hours are protected for deep work. the kind of thinking that creates competitive advantage. Midday is for administrative tasks that keep the business running. Late afternoon is for review and planning, setting up tomorrow's success. This isn't rigid scheduling. It's intelligent design. You're architecting your day to match your natural energy rhythms and cognitive capacity. When you know what type of work happens when, decision fatigue disappears. You're not constantly choosing what to do next. You're following a proven template. The result is what psychologists call flow, that state of effortless concentration where time seems to disappear and your best work emerges. But flow isn't random. It's the natural result of proper preparation and state management. Decision batching. One of the biggest drains on your cognitive resources is making the same types of decisions repeatedly throughout the day. Should I respond to this email now or later? Should I take this call? Should I attend this meeting? Each micro-decision depletes your mental energy, leaving less available for the strategic thinking that moves your business forward. Decision batching solves this problem by consolidating similar choices into designated windows. Instead of deciding whether to respond to emails throughout the day, you check and respond twice, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Instead of evaluating meeting requests as they arrive, you review them all during a weekly planning session. This approach serves two purposes. First, it reduces decision fatigue by eliminating repetitive choices. Second, it creates larger blocks of uninterrupted time for deep work. When you're not constantly deciding what to do next, you can focus on doing it well. Barack Obama famously wore only gray or blue suits during his presidency, eliminating one small decision from his daily routine. Mark Zuckerberg does the same with his gray t-shirts. These aren't quirky habits. They're strategic choices designed to preserve cognitive resources for more important decisions. You don't need to standardize your wardrobe, but you do need to identify the repetitive decisions that drain your mental energy and find ways to batch or eliminate them. The stress audit. Most people have no idea what triggers their stress responses. They react to situations without understanding the patterns that predictably derail their calm. This ignorance keeps them trapped in cycles of reactivity, never learning to prevent the problems that consistently disrupt their performance. Strategic calm requires awareness. You need to identify your specific stress triggers and design countermeasures. This starts with keeping a simple stress ledger, a brief daily note about what situations elevated your arousal and how you responded. After 2 weeks of tracking, patterns emerge. Maybe you get reactive when meetings run over their scheduled time. Maybe certain types of emails trigger anxiety. Maybe specific people or topics consistently elevate your stress levels. Once you see the patterns, you can design interventions. If long meetings stress you out, you can insist on agendas and hard stops. If certain emails trigger anxiety, you can create templates for common responses. If specific people drain your energy, you can limit your exposure or prepare differently for those interactions. The goal isn't to eliminate all stress. That's impossible and undesirable. The goal is to become conscious of your patterns so you can respond strategically instead of reactively. The compound effect of calm. When you operate from a place of strategic calm, everything improves. Your decisions become more thoughtful, your communication becomes clearer, your relationships become stronger, your work becomes more focused and effective. But the real magic happens over time. Calm compounds. Each day you operate from a centered state, you build evidence that this approach works. Your brain begins to prefer calm over chaos, stillness over stimulation. What once felt forced becomes natural. Your team notices the change. Instead of reacting to your stress, they start modeling your composure. Instead of bringing you every small problem, they begin solving more issues independently. Your calm becomes contagious, creating a more productive environment for everyone. Your clients and customers notice too. They prefer working with people who seem in control, who communicate clearly, who make decisions thoughtfully. Calm becomes a competitive advantage that's impossible to fake and difficult to replicate. Most importantly, you notice the change. Work becomes more enjoyable when you're not constantly stressed. Problems become puzzles to solve rather than crises to survive. You start looking forward to challenges instead of dreading them. This is the promise of strategic calm, not just better performance, but a better experience of work itself. The myths that keep you scattered. Before you can install strategic calm, you need to destroy the myths that keep most entrepreneurs trapped in reactive mode. The first myth is that calm means slow. In reality, calm means accurate and sustainable. When you're not wasting energy on stress responses, you can move faster and more efficiently. The second myth is that stress proves you care. This is perhaps the most destructive belief in business culture. Stress doesn't prove dedication, results do. You can care deeply about your work while maintaining your composure. In fact, caring often requires staying calm so you can think clearly about solutions. The third myth is that rituals are rigid and creativity killing. The opposite is true. Rituals create reliable freedom by automating routine decisions, leaving more mental space for creative thinking. When you don't have to decide when to do deep work, you can focus on what to create during that time. These myths persist because they feel true in the moment. Stress does feel like caring. Chaos does feel like productivity. But feelings aren't facts, and the data is clear. Calm operators consistently outperform their reactive counterparts. Installing your operating system. Strategic calm isn't a destination, it's a practice. Like physical fitness, it requires consistent effort to maintain. But unlike fitness, the benefits compound rapidly. Within weeks of implementing these protocols, you'll notice improvements in your decision quality, focus stamina, and overall effectiveness. Start with the 3-breath reset. Use it before every important decision, every difficult conversation, every transition between activities. This simple practice will begin rewiring your nervous system to prefer calm over chaos. Next, design your ideal cadence. Block your calendar for deep work during your peak energy hours. Batch administrative tasks into designated windows. Create buffers between meetings so you're not rushing from one commitment to the next. Finally, begin your stress audit. Notice what triggers your reactive responses and design specific countermeasures. This awareness alone will dramatically improve your ability to stay centered under pressure. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Each day you practice strategic calm, you're building the operating system that will serve you for the rest of your career. But calm is just the foundation. Once you've stabilized your internal state, you need to protect the external conditions that enable your best work. The next chapter reveals how to build an impenetrable fortress around your most valuable resource, one that even the most persistent distractions cannot breach. Chapter 3: Deep Work. Twice a year, Bill Gates disappears. No meetings, no phone calls, no interruptions. He retreats to a secluded cabin with nothing but books, papers, and his thoughts. For 7 straight days, he reads, reflects, and thinks deeply about Microsoft's future. These Think Weeks have produced some of the most important strategic decisions in the company's history, including the pivot to internet services and the development of the .NET framework. What Gates understood, and what most entrepreneurs miss, is that your attention is the scarcest resource you possess. More valuable than money, more finite than time, more crucial than talent. Yet most people treat it like it's unlimited, scattering it across dozens of inputs until nothing meaningful gets created. This chapter isn't about time management, it's about attention architecture. You're going to learn how to build an impenetrable fortress around your most valuable cognitive hours, creating the conditions where breakthrough work becomes inevitable rather than accidental. But first, you need to understand what you're really protecting against. The attention recession. We're living through an attention recession, and most entrepreneurs don't even realize they're bankrupt. The average knowledge worker checks email every 6 minutes, switches between applications over 1,100 times per day, gets interrupted every 11 minutes, and takes 23 minutes to fully refocus. Do the math. If you're getting interrupted every 11 minutes but need 23 minutes to refocus, you're never actually focused. You're operating in a permanent state of cognitive fragmentation, producing work that feels busy but builds nothing lasting. The cost isn't just productivity, it's quality. When your attention is scattered, you default to shallow work, responding to emails, attending meetings, handling administrative tasks. These activities feel productive because they generate immediate feedback, but they don't create competitive advantage. Deep work, the kind of sustained, focused effort that produces breakthrough insights and valuable assets, requires uninterrupted blocks of time. Not minutes, but hours. Not occasionally, but consistently. Not when you feel like it, but when your calendar demands it. This is the fortress you're building. Protected time where your best thinking can emerge without interference. The multitasking myth. The first myth you need to destroy is that multitasking makes you more productive. Neuroscience has definitively proven that the human brain cannot multitask. What we call multitasking is actually rapid task switching, and every switch carries a cognitive cost. When you shift from writing a proposal to checking Slack, your brain doesn't instantly transition. Part of your attention remains stuck on the previous task, what researchers call attention residue. This residue accumulates throughout the day, degrading your cognitive performance and leaving you mentally exhausted. The research is stark. People who multitask take 25% longer to complete tasks and make 50% more errors. They also report higher stress levels and lower job satisfaction. The very behavior that feels like productivity is actually destroying it. Consider the work habits of Cal Newport, the computer science professor who coined the term deep work. Newport protects his mornings with religious devotion, often working for 3 to 4 hours without any digital interruption. During these blocks, he produces the research papers and books that have made him one of the most influential thinkers in productivity science. Newport's secret isn't superhuman focus, it's systematic protection of his attention. He's designed his environment and schedule to make deep work inevitable and shallow work optional. The flow state advantage. When you protect your attention consistently, something remarkable happens. You begin accessing flow states on demand. Flow is that magical zone where time seems to disappear, self-consciousness vanishes, and your best work emerges effortlessly. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying flow and discovered that people in flow states are up to 5 times more productive than normal. They also report higher levels of satisfaction and creativity. Flow isn't just about getting more done. It's about doing better work while enjoying the process. But flow has prerequisites. It requires clear goals, immediate feedback, and a balance between challenge and skill level. Most importantly, it requires uninterrupted time. You cannot access flow states in 15-minute increments between meetings. You need sustained periods where your mind can fully immerse in the work. This is why protecting your attention isn't just about productivity, it's about accessing your peak cognitive performance. When you consistently create the conditions for flow, you don't just work faster, you work at a fundamentally higher level. The fortress architecture. Building your deep work fortress requires 3 components: protected time blocks, environmental triggers, and a decibel budget that limits interruptions by design. The time blocks are non-negotiable periods in your calendar, typically 90 minutes to 3 hours, where you're completely unavailable for meetings, calls, or administrative tasks. These aren't suggestions or preferences. They're as fixed as any important client meeting. The environmental triggers are physical and digital cues that signal to your brain that it's time for deep work. Same location, same setup, same ritual. These triggers reduce the activation energy required to start focused work and help you drop into flow states more quickly. The decibel budget is your systematic approach to limiting interruptions. Just as you have a financial budget that controls spending, you need a decibel budget that controls the noise in your environment. This includes caps on meetings, notifications, and other attention-grabbing inputs. Together, these 3 components create what researchers call cognitive sanctuary, a protected space where your mind can operate at its highest level without interference. The trigger stack. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. When you consistently pair certain cues with deep work, your mind begins to anticipate and prepare for focused effort. This is the principle behind trigger stacks, sequences of environmental and behavioral cues that automatically shift you into a productive state. Maya Angelou, the celebrated author, rented a small hotel room that she used exclusively for writing. Every morning, she would arrive at the same time, arrange her materials in the same way, and begin writing. The room itself became a trigger for creative work. Her brain knew that entering that space meant it was time to write. Your trigger stack might include closing your office door, putting on noise-canceling headphones, opening a specific application, or starting a countdown timer. The specific triggers matter less than their consistency. When you repeat the same sequence before every deep work session, your brain learns to associate these cues with focused effort. Over time, the triggers become so powerful that simply executing the sequence begins to shift your mental state. You don't have to force focus. It emerges naturally from the environmental cues you've conditioned. The single scope rule. One of the biggest obstacles to deep work is scope ambiguity. When you sit down for a focused session without a clear objective, you waste precious minutes deciding what to work on. This decision fatigue depletes your cognitive resources before you've even started the real work. The single scope rule solves this problem by requiring you to define exactly what you'll accomplish during each deep work block. Not a vague goal like work on the proposal, but a specific, finishable outcome like complete the executive summary section with 3 key benefits and supporting data. This specificity serves multiple purposes. First, it eliminates decision fatigue by predetermining your focus. Second, it creates a clear finish line that helps maintain motivation throughout the session. Third, it enables you to batch related work, reducing context switching within the block. The scope should be challenging but achievable within the time allocated. Too easy, and you won't enter flow. Too difficult, and you'll become frustrated and distracted. The sweet spot is work that requires your full attention but can be completed within the session. The decibel budget. Just as financial budgets prevent overspending, decibel budgets prevent overinterruption. Most entrepreneurs have no systematic approach to managing interruptions. They simply react to whatever demands their attention most loudly. This reactive approach guarantees that shallow work will crowd out deep work. A decibel budget sets specific limits on the noise in your environment. This might mean capping meetings at 2 per day, checking email only twice, or turning off all notifications during deep work blocks. The specific limits matter less than having limits at all. The budget should be ruthlessly protective of your peak cognitive hours. If you're sharpest in the morning, that's when your decibel budget should be most restrictive. If you think best in the afternoon, protect those hours with the same intensity you'd protect your most important client meeting. Remember, every interruption isn't just a momentary distraction, it's a tax on your cognitive resources that compounds throughout the day. The decibel budget helps you recognize this tax and manage it systematically. The compound effect of protection. When you consistently protect your attention, the benefits compound rapidly. In the first week, you'll notice improved focus during your protected blocks. In the first month, you'll begin accessing flow states more reliably. Within 3 months, you'll have produced more meaningful work than in the previous year. But the real transformation happens over longer time horizons. When you consistently create valuable assets during deep work sessions, your reputation begins to shift. Clients start seeking you out for complex, high-value projects. Competitors begin copying your innovations. Your pricing power increases because your work becomes genuinely differentiated. This is the ultimate goal of deep work. Not just better productivity, but better positioning in your market. When you consistently produce work that others cannot replicate, you create a sustainable competitive advantage that's impossible to outsource or automate. The myths that keep you shallow. Before you can build your fortress, you need to destroy the myths that keep most entrepreneurs trapped in shallow work. The first myth is that being constantly available demonstrates leadership. In reality, the opposite is true. Leaders who protect their thinking time make better strategic decisions and provide clearer direction to their teams. The second myth is that you thrive in chaos and interruption. This is usually a rationalization for poor attention management. While some people are more tolerant of noise than others, no one produces their best work in a state of constant interruption. The research is unambiguous. Sustained focus produces better outcomes than scattered attention. The third myth is that deep work is a luxury you can't afford when building a business. This is perhaps the most dangerous myth because it feels true in the moment. When everything feels urgent, protecting time for thinking seems selfish or impractical. But the opposite is true. The more complex your business becomes, the more you need sustained thinking time to navigate it effectively. These myths persist because they provide convenient excuses for avoiding the discipline required to protect your attention. It's easier to stay busy than to do the hard work of creating boundaries and saying no to good opportunities in service of great ones. The environmental design. Your physical environment plays a crucial role in enabling or undermining deep work. Open offices, constant notifications, and easy access to distracting websites all work against sustained focus. You need to design your environment to make deep work easy and shallow work difficult. This might mean creating a dedicated workspace that's used only for focused work. Or it might mean using website blockers during deep work sessions to prevent digital drift. The specific interventions matter less than the principle. Your environment should support your intentions, not undermine them. Consider the workspace of author Roald Dahl, who wrote classics like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Matilda. His writing hut was deliberately sparse, just a chair, a small table, and his writing materials. No phone, no distractions, nothing that could pull his attention away from the work. The simplicity wasn't ascetic, it was strategic. Your deep work environment doesn't need to be as extreme as Dahl's hut, but it should be intentionally designed to support sustained focus. Every element should either contribute to your ability to concentrate or be eliminated. The momentum bridge. One of the biggest challenges in deep work is getting started. Even when you've protected the time and designed the environment, the transition from scattered attention to sustained focus can be difficult. This is where momentum bridges become crucial. A momentum bridge is a simple activity that helps you transition into deep work mode. It might be writing a quick summary of what you accomplished in the previous session, or spending 5 minutes creating an ugly first draft of whatever you're working on. The goal isn't to produce polished work, it's to overcome the inertia that keeps you from starting. The most effective momentum bridge is ending each deep work session by writing the first sentence of your next session. This gives you a clear starting point that eliminates the blank page problem. When you sit down for your next deep work block, you don't have to decide what to work on or how to begin. You simply continue from where you left off. This technique was famously used by Ernest Hemingway, who would stop writing mid-sentence when he knew what came next. This made it easy to resume writing the following day because he didn't have to overcome the creative inertia of starting from nothing. The protection protocols. Building your deep work fortress requires specific protocols that make protection automatic rather than dependent on willpower. These protocols should be simple enough to follow consistently, but comprehensive enough to create real sanctuary. Your calendar protocol might involve blocking deep work time at the beginning of each week and treating these blocks as unmovable commitments. Your communication protocol might involve checking email only at designated times and using autoresponders to set expectations about response times. Your environmental protocol might involve using the same physical setup for every deep work session and eliminating potential distractions before you begin. Your digital protocol might involve closing unnecessary applications and using website blockers to prevent unconscious browsing. The key is making these protocols habitual rather than conscious decisions. When protection becomes automatic, You don't have to spend mental energy defending your attention. It's already defended by your systems. The quality revolution. When you consistently protect your attention and create the conditions for deep work, something remarkable happens. The quality of your output improves dramatically. You stop producing work that's merely adequate and start creating assets that are genuinely valuable. This quality improvement isn't just about spending more time on projects, it's about accessing different cognitive capabilities. When your mind isn't fragmented by interruptions, you can see patterns and connections that were invisible before. You can think several moves ahead instead of just reacting to immediate pressures. The market rewards this quality improvement with higher prices, better opportunities, and stronger relationships. Clients begin seeking you out specifically because of the depth and thoughtfulness of your work. Competitors struggle to replicate your output because they can't replicate your process. This is the ultimate promise of deep work, not just better productivity, but better positioning in your market. When you consistently produce work that others cannot match, you create sustainable competitive advantage. The fortress mindset. Building your deep work fortress isn't just about techniques and protocols. It's about adopting a fundamentally different mindset about attention and value creation. You need to see your cognitive resources as precious and finite, worthy of the same protection you'd give to your most valuable financial assets. This mindset shift affects every decision you make about how to spend your time and attention. You become more selective about meetings, more protective of your peak hours, more intentional about the inputs you allow into your environment. You also become more confident in saying no to requests that don't align with your deep work priorities. This isn't selfishness, it's strategic resource allocation. When you protect your ability to create valuable assets, you serve your clients, team, and market more effectively. The fortress mindset recognizes that in a world of infinite distractions, the ability to focus deeply is becoming increasingly rare and valuable. By developing this capability systematically, you're not just improving your productivity, you're building a sustainable competitive advantage. But even the strongest fortress is only as good as what happens inside it. Once you've protected your attention, you need to ensure that the work you do during those precious hours actually moves your business forward. The next chapter reveals an execution system so powerful that most entrepreneurs are afraid to use it because it forces them to confront the uncomfortable truth about whether their efforts are actually creating value. Chapter 4, Silent Execution. The room was windowless, sterile, and completely secret. Inside, 12 of Apple's most trusted engineers huddled around a prototype that would eventually become the iPhone. For months, they had been iterating in complete silence. No leaks, no announcements, no public commitments. Just relentless building, testing, and refining behind closed doors. While competitors were announcing their iPhone killers years before they could ship them, Apple was quietly solving problems that others didn't even know existed. Multi-touch interfaces, battery optimization, manufacturing at scale. By the time Steve Jobs took the stage in 2007, the iPhone wasn't a promise. It was a proven reality. This is the power of silent execution. The ability to build, test, and iterate without the noise of public scrutiny. While others are performing for audiences, you're perfecting in private. While they're managing expectations, you're exceeding them. While they're explaining why something doesn't work, you're shipping something that does. But silent execution isn't just about secrecy. It's about creating the conditions where truth emerges faster than theater. The announcement trap. Most entrepreneurs fall into the same trap. They announce their intentions before they've proven their capabilities. They post about upcoming launches, promise delivery dates, and commit to features that don't yet exist. This feels like accountability, but it's actually sabotage. When you make public commitments, your brain releases dopamine as if you've already achieved the goal. The announcement becomes a substitute for accomplishment. Worse, public pressure distorts your decision-making. Instead of optimizing for what works, you optimize for what looks good to your audience. Consider the difference between two approaches to launching a new service. The first entrepreneur announces their plans on social media, shares behind-the-scenes content, and builds anticipation through regular updates. The second entrepreneur builds the service quietly, tests it with a small group of trusted clients, and only announces it after proving it works. The first approach generates more immediate attention but creates multiple problems. Every setback becomes public. Every pivot requires explanation. Every delay damages credibility. The entrepreneur becomes trapped by their own promises, forced to ship something that meets their public commitments rather than their private standards. The second approach generates less immediate attention but creates better outcomes. Setbacks remain private learning opportunities. Pivots happen quickly without reputational damage. The final product reflects what actually works rather than what was initially promised. This is the fundamental choice in execution. Optimize for applause or optimize for results. You cannot do both simultaneously. The premortem advantage. Before you build anything, you need to imagine its failure. This isn't pessimism, it's strategic preparation. The premortem is a simple exercise that exploits a cognitive bias called hindsight bias to surface risks before they become reality. Here's how it works. Imagine your project has failed completely. Now work backward to identify the most likely causes of that failure. What assumptions proved wrong? What resources were insufficient? What external factors intervened? What internal mistakes were made? This exercise reveals failure modes that are invisible when you're focused on success scenarios. It forces you to confront uncomfortable truths about resource constraints, market realities, and execution challenges. Most importantly, it allows you to design countermeasures before problems occur, rather than after. Pixar uses a version of this approach in their brain trust sessions. Before any film goes into full production, a small group of trusted directors and producers gather to identify everything that could go wrong with the story, characters, and execution. These sessions are brutal but private. No egos, no politics, just honest assessment of what needs to be fixed. The result? Pixar has produced more critically and commercially successful films than any other animation studio. Their secret isn't superior talent, it's superior process. They find and fix problems in private before they become public failures. The learning loop. Silent execution operates on a simple but powerful cycle: scope, build, test, measure, iterate. Each cycle is short, typically 7 to 14 days, and focused on a single testable hypothesis. The goal isn't to build the perfect solution immediately, but to learn what works as quickly as possible. The scope phase defines exactly what you'll build and how you'll measure success. This isn't a vague goal like improve user experience, but a specific testable outcome, like increase task completion rate to 85% with new users. The more precise your scope, the faster you'll learn. The build phase creates the smallest version that can be meaningfully tested. This might be a prototype, a pilot program, or a simplified version of your full vision. The key is building just enough to test your hypothesis without overinvesting in unproven assumptions. The test phase exposes your work to real users in real conditions. But here's the crucial difference from public launches. You test with a small, carefully selected group who understand they're evaluating an experiment, not a finished product. This gives you honest feedback without reputational risk. The measure phase compares your results to your success criteria. This isn't subjective evaluation, but objective measurement against predetermined metrics. Did you hit your target or not? The answer is binary: pass or fail. The iterate phase uses your learning to improve the next version. If you passed, you stabilize the solution and prepare for broader deployment. If you failed, you adjust one variable and run the loop again. Either way, you're learning faster than competitors who are still planning their first public launch. The privacy premium. Working in private creates multiple advantages that public execution cannot match. First, it eliminates the performance tax, the mental energy you spend managing external perceptions instead of solving actual problems. When no one is watching, you can focus entirely on what works rather than what looks good. Second, it preserves optionality. When you work publicly, every decision becomes a commitment that's difficult to reverse without losing credibility. When you work privately, you can pivot quickly based on new information without explaining yourself to critics or disappointed followers. Third, it attracts better feedback. When people know they're evaluating a private experiment rather than a public product, they give more honest, detailed input. They're not worried about hurting your feelings or damaging your reputation. They're focused on helping you improve. Fourth, it compresses learning cycles. Public launches require extensive preparation, coordination, and follow-up. Private tests can be deployed quickly, evaluated rapidly, and iterated immediately. You can run multiple learning cycles in the time it takes competitors to plan one public launch. The privacy premium compounds over time. While others are managing the complexity of public commitments, you're accumulating knowledge and capabilities. By the time you're ready to go public, you have a significant advantage in both product quality and market understanding. The feedback filter. Not all feedback is created equal. Public feedback tends to be noisy, emotional, and biased toward extreme opinions. Private feedback from carefully selected evaluators tends to be signal-rich, thoughtful, and actionable. The key is curating your feedback sources. You want people who understand your market, have relevant expertise, and can provide honest assessment without personal agenda. This might be existing clients, industry experts, or trusted advisors, but it should never be the general public during early iterations. Consider how Amazon develops new services. They don't announce products and gather public input. Instead, they test extensively with internal teams and selected customers, iterating based on usage data and direct feedback. Only when they've proven the concept internally do they launch publicly, and by then, they've already solved most of the problems that would have generated negative public feedback. This approach requires discipline. It's tempting to seek validation from a broader audience, especially when early results are promising. But premature exposure invites premature judgment. Better to perfect in private than explain in public. The scope discipline. The biggest enemy of silent execution is scope creep. When you're working privately, it's easy to keep adding features, expanding objectives, and chasing perfect solutions. This defeats the purpose of short learning cycles and leads to the same over-engineering that plagues public projects. Scope discipline requires defining exactly what you'll build before you start building it. This definition should include not just what you'll create, but what you won't create. What features are explicitly excluded? What use cases are out of scope? What level of polish is sufficient for testing? The scope should be achievable within your time window, typically 1 to 2 weeks. If you can't build and test your hypothesis in that time frame, your scope is too broad. Better to test a narrow hypothesis quickly than a broad hypothesis slowly. Most importantly, the scope should be frozen once you start building. New ideas and improvements should go into a later backlog, not into the current cycle. This prevents the feature creep that turns focused experiments into sprawling projects. The binary decision. At the end of each cycle, you face a binary decision. Does this work or doesn't it? This isn't a subjective judgment, but an objective assessment against predetermined criteria. Either you hit your success metrics or you didn't. Either the hypothesis was validated or it wasn't. This binary approach prevents the rationalization that kills learning. It's easy to convince yourself that mediocre results are actually promising, that you just need to tweak a few things, that success is just around the corner. Binary decisions force honesty about what's actually working. If you pass, you stabilize the solution and prepare for the next level of testing or deployment. This might mean documenting the process, training team members, or scaling to a larger test group. The key is locking in what works before moving forward. If you fail, you adjust one variable and run the cycle again. This might mean changing the target market, modifying the feature set, or trying a different approach entirely. The key is changing only one thing at a time so you can isolate what drives improvement. This binary approach accelerates learning because it prevents the endless tweaking that characterizes most product development. You either have something worth building on or you don't. If you don't, you pivot quickly rather than polishing something that fundamentally doesn't work. The compound effect. Silent execution creates a compound effect that becomes more powerful over time. Each cycle teaches you something about your market, your capabilities, and your assumptions. This knowledge accumulates, making subsequent cycles faster and more effective. You also develop what researchers call execution intelligence, the ability to quickly identify what will work and what won't. This isn't intuition, but pattern recognition based on repeated cycles of building, testing, and measuring. You start seeing problems and opportunities that are invisible to others. Your team develops similar capabilities. They become comfortable with rapid iteration, honest feedback, and binary decisions. They stop over-engineering solutions and start focusing on what actually moves metrics. The entire organization becomes more agile and responsive. Most importantly, you build a portfolio of proven solutions rather than promising ideas. While competitors are still validating their concepts, you're scaling solutions that have already been tested and refined. This gives you a significant advantage in both speed to market and product quality. The stealth advantage. Working in silence creates strategic advantages that extend beyond product development. When competitors don't know what you're building, they can't copy your approach or preempt your launch. When customers don't know what's coming, they can't delay purchases waiting for your next release. This stealth advantage is particularly powerful in competitive markets. While others are telegraphing their moves through public announcements and development updates, you're moving quietly toward objectives they don't even know exist. By the time they recognize the threat, you've already established a position that's difficult to attack. The stealth advantage also applies to talent acquisition. When you're not publicly struggling with problems, you don't signal weakness to potential employees or partners. When you do announce successes, they carry more weight because they're backed by proven results rather than hopeful projections. The truth filter. Perhaps the most important benefit of silent execution is that it optimizes for truth rather than perception. When you're not performing for an audience, you can acknowledge problems quickly, pivot based on evidence, and focus on what actually works rather than what sounds good. This truth filter is crucial because markets are ultimately truth-seeking systems. Products that don't solve real problems fail regardless of how well they're marketed. Services that don't deliver value lose customers regardless of how eloquently they're described. Businesses that don't create sustainable advantages get disrupted, regardless of how much attention they generate. Silent execution aligns your incentives with market truth. You succeed by creating value, not by managing perceptions. You win by solving problems, not by explaining why problems are hard to solve. You build sustainable advantages by doing things that work, not by promising things that might work. The execution mindset. Silent execution requires a fundamental mindset shift from announcement to accomplishment. Instead of seeking validation through public commitments, you seek validation through private results. Instead of managing external expectations, you exceed internal standards. Instead of explaining your process, you demonstrate your outcomes. This mindset shift affects every aspect of how you approach work. You become more comfortable with uncertainty because you're not locked into public positions. You become more willing to experiment because failure is private learning rather than public embarrassment. You become more focused on substance because you're not distracted by style. The execution mindset also makes you more attractive to high-quality partners and customers. People prefer working with those who deliver results rather than those who promise them. They trust actions more than words, outcomes more than intentions, proof more than potential. The iteration imperative. The goal of silent execution isn't to build perfect solutions on the first try. It's to build better solutions on every try. This requires embracing iteration as a core competency rather than a sign of failure. Each cycle should produce a measurably better version than the previous one. This iterative approach is particularly powerful in complex or uncertain environments. Instead of trying to predict what will work, you discover what works through systematic experimentation. Instead of betting everything on one approach, you test multiple approaches and double down on what succeeds. The iteration imperative also keeps you humble and responsive to feedback. You're not defending a predetermined solution, but evolving toward the best solution. This makes you more likely to discover breakthrough innovations that wouldn't have been apparent from initial planning. The silent revolution. Silent execution is becoming a competitive necessity in fast-moving markets. The companies that win are those that can learn and adapt faster than their competitors. This requires the ability to experiment rapidly, fail safely, and iterate continuously, all capabilities that are enhanced by working in private. The silent revolution is already underway in technology, where companies like Amazon, Google, and Netflix routinely test hundreds of variations before settling on final solutions. But the principles apply to any business that needs to innovate and adapt quickly. The choice is yours. Join the noisemakers who announce their intentions and struggle to deliver, or become a silent executor who delivers results that speak for themselves. The market rewards outcomes, not announcements. Value, not volume. Substance, not style. But silent execution is only half the equation. Once you've proven what works, you need systems that ensure it keeps working without your constant intervention. The next chapter reveals how to build invisible infrastructure that turns your hard-won insights into automatic advantages, creating the kind of operational leverage that most entrepreneurs never achieve because they're too busy fighting fires to build fire prevention systems. Chapter 5. Invisible Systems. The assembly line was silent except for the rhythmic hum of machinery. No supervisors shouting instructions, no workers scrambling to fix mistakes, no chaos masquerading as urgency, just smooth, predictable flow from raw materials to finished automobiles. This was Toyota's revolutionary production system in action, a marvel of invisible engineering that transformed manufacturing forever. What looked like simple car assembly was actually an intricate web of standards, checks, and feedback loops that made quality inevitable rather than accidental. W. Edwards Deming, the quality guru who helped design these systems, understood something most business leaders miss. Heroics are the enemy of excellence. When success depends on individual brilliance, it's fragile and unrepeatable. When success is built into the system itself, it becomes automatic and scalable. But here's what Deming knew that most entrepreneurs refuse to accept. The most powerful systems are the ones you never see. The hero trap. Most businesses run on heroics. When problems arise, someone works late to fix them. When quality slips, someone manually reviews everything. When deadlines loom, someone pulls an all-nighter to deliver. This feels like dedication, but it's actually dysfunction. Heroic businesses are fragile businesses. They depend on specific people being available, motivated, and error-free. They can't scale because heroes don't scale. They can't maintain quality because heroes get tired. They can't create predictable outcomes because heroes are inherently unpredictable. The alternative is systematic excellence, building processes that make the right thing the easy thing. When good outcomes are automatic rather than accidental, you don't need heroes, you need systems. Consider the difference between two consulting firms. The first relies on brilliant partners who personally oversee every project, making crucial decisions and solving complex problems through individual expertise. The second has documented methodologies, standardized deliverables, and clear quality checkpoints that ensure consistent outcomes regardless of who's assigned to the project. The first firm produces occasional brilliance but inconsistent results. Client satisfaction varies wildly based on which partner they get. Growth is limited by the availability of exceptional talent. The business is essentially a collection of individual practices rather than a scalable enterprise. The second firm produces reliable excellence through systematic design. Client satisfaction is predictably high because the process ensures it. Growth is limited only by the ability to hire and train competent people, not exceptional ones. The business is an asset that can operate and expand independent of any individual. This is the power of invisible systems. They make excellence automatic rather than heroic. The standards revolution. Most entrepreneurs think standards are bureaucratic constraints that slow things down. They're wrong. Standards are cognitive shortcuts that speed things up by eliminating decision fatigue and preventing rework. When you have clear standards for what constitutes acceptable work, people don't waste time guessing what you want. They don't over-engineer solutions or under-deliver results. They hit the target consistently because the target is clearly defined. Reed Hastings learned this lesson while building Netflix. In the early days, the company operated like most startups, smart people making it up as they went along. This worked when the team was small and everyone could communicate directly. But as Netflix grew, inconsistency crept in. Different teams had different quality bars. Similar problems were solved differently by different people. Rework became epidemic. Hastings' solution wasn't more oversight or detailed procedures. Instead, he created what Netflix calls freedom and responsibility, a culture where people have maximum autonomy within clearly defined standards. Employees can make any decision they want as long as it serves the customer and advances the company's goals. But those goals and standards are crystal clear, documented, and consistently applied. The result? Netflix scaled from a DVD by mail service to a global streaming giant while maintaining the agility and innovation of a startup. Their secret wasn't hiring better people, it was creating better systems that enabled good people to do their best work consistently. The scorecard science. Most accountability systems are performative theater designed to make people feel productive rather than actually be productive. Weekly status meetings where everyone reports what they're working on. Dashboard reviews where metrics are discussed but no decisions are made. Public commitments that create pressure without improving outcomes. Real accountability is private, specific, and action-oriented. It focuses on lagging indicators, results that matter, rather than leading indicators that can be gamed. It creates feedback loops that enable course correction rather than blame assignment. The most effective accountability tool is the private scorecard, a simple weekly review of 3 to 5 key metrics that directly correlate with business success. Not vanity metrics like website traffic or social media followers, but outcome metrics like customer retention, profit margin, and cycle time. Each metric has a clear owner who's responsible for both the result and the improvement plan. The review takes 15 minutes every Friday and focuses on one question. What's the single most important thing we can do next week to improve this number? This approach satisfies the human need for consistency and progress without creating the performance pressure that distorts decision-making. You're accountable to results, not to appearances. You're optimizing for outcomes, not optics. The documentation dilemma. Most people hate documentation because they've experienced bad documentation, lengthy manuals that nobody reads, complex procedures that nobody follows, outdated instructions that nobody trusts. But the problem isn't documentation itself, it's documentation done wrong. Good documentation is invisible until you need it. It lives where the work happens, not in a separate system that requires extra effort to access. It's concise enough to be useful and specific enough to be actionable. It's maintained by the people who use it, not by people who don't. The key is thinking of documentation as a tool for thinking, not just a record of thinking. When you document a process, you're forced to think through edge cases, dependencies, and failure modes that might otherwise be overlooked. The act of writing clarifies the thinking, and the written result preserves that clarity for future use. Consider how surgical teams use checklists. These aren't detailed procedures that explain how to perform surgery. The surgeons already know that. They're simple reminders of critical steps that are easy to forget under pressure. Confirm patient identity. Verify surgical site. Check for allergies. The checklist doesn't replace expertise. It supports it. Your business needs similar tools. Not comprehensive manuals that explain everything, but focused checklists that prevent common mistakes. not detailed procedures that constrain creativity, but clear standards that enable it. The SOP sprint. The fastest way to capture and systematize your expertise is through what we call an SOP sprint, a focused session where you document a recurring process while you're actually doing it. This isn't theoretical documentation based on how you think the process should work. It's practical documentation based on how it actually works. Here's the process. Choose a task you do regularly, set up a screen recorder or voice memo, and narrate what you're doing as you do it. Don't edit yourself or try to make it perfect. Just capture the actual steps, decisions, and considerations that go into the work. After you finish, review the recording and extract the essential steps. Most processes have 5 to 9 core steps with various sub-steps and decision points. Focus on the sequence and the criteria for moving from one step to the next. Then add the operational details that make the SOP useful. Who owns each step? What tools are required? How long each step should take? What constitutes acceptable output? And what to do if something goes wrong. Finally, embed the SOP where the work happens. If it's a software process, put the checklist in the software. If it's a client interaction, put the template in your CRM. If it's a project workflow, put the steps in your project management tool. The goal is making the SOP so convenient to use that following it is easier than not following it. The quality gates. Most quality problems aren't caused by lack of skill or effort. They're caused by lack of clarity about what constitutes quality. When standards are vague or subjective, people guess what you want and often guess wrong. When standards are specific and objective, people hit the target consistently. Quality gates are specific checkpoints where work is evaluated against predetermined criteria before moving to the next stage. These aren't bureaucratic approval processes, but practical quality assurance mechanisms that catch problems early when they're cheap to fix. For example, a content creation process might have 3 quality gates: outline approval before writing begins, draft review before editing starts, and final check before publication. Each gate has specific criteria that must be met. Outline includes key messages and target audience, draft meets word count and style guidelines, final version passes spell check and brand review. The key is making the criteria objective rather than subjective. Instead of high-quality writing, specify no grammatical errors, clear topic sentences, and supporting evidence for each claim. Instead of good design, specify consistent with brand guidelines, readable on mobile devices, and load time under 3 seconds. Objective criteria eliminate the guesswork that leads to rework and the politics that slow down approval processes. When everyone knows exactly what constitutes acceptable work, quality becomes automatic rather than accidental. The Independence Index. The ultimate test of your systems is whether your business can operate without you. This isn't about delegation or time management. It's about building an organization that has institutional knowledge rather than just individual expertise. Most entrepreneurs are trapped by their own indispensability. They're the only ones who know how to handle difficult clients, make complex decisions, or solve unusual problems. This feels important, but it's actually limiting. When you're indispensable, you can't scale, you can't take time off, and you can't focus on high-leverage activities. The solution is systematically documenting and distributing your knowledge so that others can make the same decisions you would make. This doesn't mean micromanaging or removing human judgment. It means providing the frameworks and criteria that enable good judgment. Start by identifying your single points of failure, tasks or decisions that only you can handle. Then create systems that enable others to handle them. This might mean documenting decision criteria, creating approval workflows, or training backup personnel. The goal is achieving what we call owner independence, the ability for your business to operate at 80% effectiveness without your daily involvement. This isn't about becoming unnecessary. It's about becoming focused on the 20% of activities that only you can do while systematizing the 80% that others can handle with proper support. The compound effect of systems. When you build systems consistently, they create a compound effect that becomes more powerful over time. Each process you document makes the next one easier. Each standard you establish reinforces the others. Each quality gate you install reduces the need for heroic interventions. Your team develops what researchers call procedural memory, the ability to execute complex tasks automatically without conscious thought. This frees up cognitive resources for creative problem solving and strategic thinking. Work becomes more enjoyable because people spend less time figuring out what to do and more time doing it well. Your clients notice the difference too. Consistent quality builds trust. Predictable delivery builds confidence. Reliable communication builds loyalty. Systems don't just improve your internal operations, they improve your external relationships. Most importantly, systems create optionality. When your business runs on documented processes rather than individual heroics, you can scale faster, pivot more easily, and exit more profitably. The business becomes an asset rather than just a job. The measurement mindset. What gets measured gets managed, but what gets measured wrong gets managed wrong. Most businesses track too many metrics, focus on the wrong indicators, and create gaming behaviors that optimize for the measurement rather than the outcome. The key is identifying the vital few metrics that actually predict business success. These are usually lagging indicators, results that matter, rather than leading indicators that can be manipulated. Customer retention rather than website traffic, profit margin rather than revenue growth, cycle time rather than activity levels. Each metric should have a clear owner who's responsible for both the result and the improvement plan. The owner should understand how their actions directly influence the metric and have the authority to make changes that improve it. The measurement rhythm should be frequent enough to enable course correction, but not so frequent that it becomes a distraction. Weekly reviews work for most operational metrics. Monthly reviews work for strategic metrics. Quarterly reviews work for outcome metrics. Most importantly, the measurement system should focus on learning rather than judgment. The goal isn't to punish poor performance, but to understand what drives good performance and systematically create more of it. The anti-bureaucracy bias. The biggest obstacle to building systems isn't technical, it's psychological. Most entrepreneurs have an anti-bureaucracy bias that makes them resist anything that feels like corporate process. They associate systems with rigidity, creativity killing, and slow decision-making. This bias is understandable but misguided. Bad systems are bureaucratic and creativity killing. Good systems are liberating and creativity enabling. The difference is in the design and implementation. Good systems eliminate routine decisions so you can focus on important ones. They prevent common mistakes so you can take intelligent risks. They create predictable outcomes so you can experiment with confidence. They don't constrain creativity. They create the stable foundation that enables it. The key is designing systems that serve the work rather than the other way around. Start with the outcome you want to achieve. Then work backward to identify the minimum viable process that reliably produces that outcome. Add complexity only when it's necessary and remove it as soon as it's not. Remember, the goal isn't to create perfect systems, but to create better outcomes. Systems are tools, not destinations. They should make your work easier, not harder. The invisible advantage. The most powerful systems are the ones your competitors can't see or copy. They're embedded in your culture, your processes, and your decision-making frameworks. They create sustainable competitive advantage because they're based on accumulated knowledge and refined execution rather than individual brilliance or market timing. When your systems are invisible, they're also defensible. Competitors can copy your products, your pricing, or your marketing messages. They can't copy your institutional knowledge, your quality standards, or your execution capabilities. These advantages compound over time and become increasingly difficult to replicate. The invisible advantage also applies to talent acquisition and retention. Good people want to work in organizations where they can do their best work without fighting broken processes or unclear expectations. When your systems enable excellence rather than requiring heroics, you attract and retain better team members. The system paradox. Here's the paradox of systems. The more automatic they become, the more human your business becomes. When routine tasks are systematized, people can focus on relationship building, creative problem solving, and strategic thinking. When quality is built into the process, people can focus on innovation rather than error correction. Systems don't replace human judgment, they enhance it by providing better information, clearer criteria, and faster feedback loops. They don't eliminate the need for skill, they amplify skill by preventing it from being wasted on preventable problems. The ultimate goal of invisible systems is visible results. When your processes work smoothly in the background, your outcomes shine in the foreground. When your quality is automatic, your innovation becomes apparent. When your execution is systematic, your strategy becomes effective. But systems alone aren't enough. Even the most elegant processes can be undermined by impatience and the pressure to show immediate results. The next chapter reveals why the most successful operators deliberately delay recognition until their advantages become unassailable, and how this counterintuitive approach creates the kind of sustainable dominance that flashier competitors can never achieve. Chapter 6: Patient Power. For 20 years, Jim Simons was invisible. While other hedge fund managers courted media attention and spoke at conferences, Simons worked in silence from a converted auto repair shop on Long Island. No interviews, no public appearances, no bold predictions about market direction. His Renaissance Technologies Fund was generating returns that seemed impossible, 66% annually for 3 decades. But almost no one knew about it. When financial journalists tried to profile him, they found virtually nothing. When competitors tried to understand his methods, they hit walls of secrecy. When investors begged for access, most were turned away. Simons understood something that most entrepreneurs never grasp. The most powerful force in business isn't speed or innovation or marketing, it's time. But time only works its magic when you're patient enough to let it compound without interference. This chapter isn't about moving slowly. It's about moving deliberately while resisting the gravitational pull of premature recognition that destroys more promising ventures than any external competitor ever could. The flat earth problem. Compounding is the most counterintuitive force in business. For months or even years, progress feels painfully slow. You're working hard, making improvements, building assets, but the results look linear, predictable, almost boring. This is what mathematicians call the flat part of the exponential curve. Most entrepreneurs quit during this phase. They see competitors getting attention, investors funding flashier concepts, customers choosing more visible alternatives. The temptation to announce, promote, and accelerate becomes overwhelming. They mistake the flat part for failure when it's actually the foundation of future dominance. Jeff Bezos faced this exact challenge in Amazon's early years. From 1994 to 2001, the company lost money every quarter. Investors questioned the business model. Analysts predicted failure. Competitors mocked the everything store concept as unfocused and unsustainable. But Bezos understood the flat earth problem. He knew that Amazon's investments in logistics, technology, and customer experience were compounding beneath the surface. Each warehouse built, each algorithm improved, each customer relationship strengthened was adding to an advantage that would eventually become unassailable. The patience dividend arrived in the 2000s when Amazon's infrastructure investments began generating exponential returns. While competitors were still building basic e-commerce capabilities, Amazon was already moving into cloud computing, digital media, and artificial intelligence. The boring years of infrastructure building had created a platform for explosive growth. This is the power of patient accumulation. Small, correct actions repeated consistently over time create advantages that appear sudden to outside observers but are actually the inevitable result of sustained effort. The recognition trap. Early recognition is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a growing business. When you receive attention before you've built defensible advantages, you invite three problems that can destroy your momentum: copycats, distractions, and premature scaling pressure. Copycats are the most obvious threat. When you publicize a successful innovation before you've built protective moats around it, competitors can reverse engineer your approach and often execute it better with more resources. The first mover advantage becomes a first mover disadvantage when you've shown others the path without securing your position. Distractions are more subtle but equally dangerous. Media attention brings speaking opportunities, partnership proposals, and investment offers that feel like validation but actually drain focus from core execution. Each interview, conference, and meeting is time not spent building the capabilities that create sustainable advantage. Premature scaling pressure is the most insidious threat. When you receive early recognition, stakeholders expect you to capitalize immediately. Investors want faster growth. Customers expect broader offerings. Employees anticipate rapid expansion. This pressure can force you to scale before your foundation is solid, leading to quality problems, operational chaos, and competitive vulnerability. The solution isn't to avoid recognition forever. It's to delay it until you've built the defensive capabilities that make recognition beneficial rather than destructive. The stealth advantage. Working in stealth mode creates multiple advantages that become more powerful over time. First, it preserves optionality. When you're not locked into public positions, you can pivot quickly based on new information without explaining yourself to critics or disappointed stakeholders. Second, it accelerates learning. When you're not performing for an audience, you can focus entirely on what works rather than what looks good. You can experiment freely, fail safely, and iterate rapidly without reputational consequences. Third, it compounds focus. When you're not managing external perceptions, all your energy flows into execution. You're not distracted by media requests, speaking opportunities, or competitive responses to your public statements. Fourth, it creates information asymmetry. While competitors are broadcasting their strategies and capabilities, you're accumulating knowledge and advantages they can't see or counter. By the time they recognize the threat, you've already established positions that are difficult to attack. Consider how Apple developed the iPhone. For years, the project was so secret that most Apple employees didn't know it existed. While competitors were announcing their iPhone killers and explaining their mobile strategies, Apple was quietly solving fundamental problems in user interface design, battery technology, and manufacturing processes. When the iPhone finally launched in 2007, it wasn't just a new product. It was a demonstration of capabilities that competitors couldn't match. The years of stealth development had created advantages in hardware integration, software optimization, and supply chain management that took competitors years to replicate. The compounding calendar. Most entrepreneurs think in quarters or fiscal years, but Patient Power operates on longer time horizons. The most effective framework is what we call the compounding calendar, a systematic approach to building assets that accumulate value over 12-week cycles. Each cycle focuses on a single asset class: content libraries, product modules, partner relationships, or operational capabilities. The goal isn't to complete the asset in one cycle, but to make meaningful progress that compounds with previous efforts. For example, a content-focused cycle might involve publishing one substantial piece every week for 12 weeks. By the end of the cycle, you have 12 pieces of content. But the real value is cumulative. 12 pieces create more authority than any single piece, generate more search traffic than isolated posts, and provide more material for repurposing and cross-promotion. The key is maintaining weekly momentum while measuring cumulative impact. Each Friday, you review not just what you accomplished that week, but how it adds to your growing asset base. This dual focus, weekly execution and cumulative progress, creates the rhythm of Patient Power. Over multiple cycles, these assets begin to interact and amplify each other. Content drives leads that become case studies that attract better clients, that provide testimonials that improve content quality. The flywheel effect emerges not from any single effort, but from the systematic accumulation of related assets over time. The recognition gates. The challenge of patient power is knowing when to transition from stealth to visibility. Too early, and you invite the problems of premature recognition. Too late, and you miss opportunities to capitalize on your advantages. The solution is setting objective recognition gates, specific, measurable thresholds that must be met before you begin seeking broader attention. These gates should reflect genuine business strength rather than vanity metrics. Effective recognition gates might include customer retention rates above 70%, net promoter scores above 40, or profit margins above 20%. The specific metrics matter less than their objectivity and their correlation with sustainable competitive advantage. The gates should also include duration requirements. It's not enough to hit the threshold once. You need to sustain it for at least 8 weeks to prove it's not a statistical fluke. This patience requirement prevents you from going public based on temporary spikes that don't reflect underlying strength. Most importantly, you need to hit multiple gates simultaneously. High retention with low margins suggests pricing problems. High margins with low retention suggests value problems. Strong metrics that can't be sustained suggest operational problems. Only when multiple indicators align should you consider broader visibility. The spotlight filter. Even after you've passed your recognition gates, not all attention is beneficial. The spotlight filter helps you distinguish between exposure that strengthens your position and exposure that weakens it. Beneficial exposure improves retention, increases margins, or attracts higher quality leads. This might include speaking at industry conferences where your ideal clients gather, participating in case studies that demonstrate your capabilities, or contributing to publications that your target market reads. Harmful exposure generates activity without improving outcomes. This includes most general media coverage, speaking at events outside your target market, or participating in discussions that don't advance your strategic objectives. The filter requires discipline because harmful exposure often feels more flattering than beneficial exposure. It's more exciting to be featured in a major publication than a trade journal, more ego-satisfying to speak at a large conference than a small industry gathering. But patient power prioritizes substance over style, outcomes over optics. The key is creating a quiet no template that allows you to decline opportunities gracefully without burning bridges. Something like, "Thank you for thinking of us. We're focused on serving our current clients exceptionally well and aren't taking on additional commitments right now. Please keep us in mind for future opportunities." The long game mindset. Patient power requires a fundamental mindset shift from quarterly thinking to generational thinking. Instead of optimizing for immediate results, you optimize for sustainable advantages that compound over decades. This doesn't mean moving slowly, it means moving deliberately. You execute with urgency while maintaining patience about outcomes. You work hard in the present while investing for the future. You compete aggressively while thinking strategically. The long game mindset affects every business decision. You choose clients who will become better references over time rather than those who pay the most immediately. You invest in capabilities that will create future optionality rather than just solving current problems. You build relationships that will compound rather than just transact. This approach requires confidence in your strategy and discipline in your execution. It's easier to chase immediate opportunities than to build long-term advantages. It's more satisfying to see quick wins than to trust in compound effects. But the long game is where sustainable success lives. The patience dividend. When you successfully navigate the flat part of the compounding curve, something remarkable happens. Your advantages begin to multiply rather than just add. This is the patience dividend, the point where accumulated assets start generating exponential rather than linear returns. The dividend manifests in multiple ways. Your reputation begins to work for you, attracting opportunities without active business development. Your systems begin to leverage each other, creating efficiency gains that improve margins. Your relationships begin to generate referrals that reduce acquisition costs. Most importantly, your competitive position becomes increasingly defensible. Competitors can copy individual tactics, but can't replicate years of accumulated advantages. They can match your current capabilities, but can't compress the time required to build institutional knowledge, refined processes, and deep relationships. The patience dividend is why some businesses seem to suddenly become overnight successes after years of obscurity. The success isn't sudden, it's the visible manifestation of invisible compounding that finally crosses the threshold of public awareness. The impatience antidote. The biggest threat to patient power is your own impatience. When progress feels slow, when competitors seem to be moving faster, when opportunities appear to be passing you by, the temptation to abandon the long game becomes overwhelming. The antidote is systematic tracking of compound metrics, measurements that capture cumulative progress rather than just current performance. This might include lifetime customer value, repeat purchase rates, or the percentage of revenue from referrals. These metrics help you see the compound effects that aren't visible in monthly revenue or quarterly growth rates. You also need regular long-game reviews, brief sessions every 4 weeks where you step back from daily operations and assess your progress toward long-term objectives. These reviews help you maintain perspective when short-term pressures threaten to derail long-term strategy. Most importantly, you need to celebrate input goals rather than just output goals. Instead of celebrating revenue milestones or customer counts, celebrate the completion of systems, the shipping of assets, and the execution of processes that will compound over time. This reinforces the behaviors that create patient power rather than just the results that demonstrate it. The compound effect across domains. Patient power isn't just a business strategy, it's a life philosophy that creates advantages across multiple domains. The discipline required to delay recognition in business also improves personal relationships, financial management, and skill development. In relationships, patient power means investing in deep connections rather than broad networks. It means being reliable over time rather than impressive in moments. It means building trust through consistent actions rather than grand gestures. In finance, patient power means choosing investments that compound over decades rather than trades that might pay off quickly. It means building wealth through systematic saving and investing rather than speculative bets. In skill development, patient power means focusing on fundamentals that improve over time rather than tricks that provide immediate results. It means building expertise through deliberate practice rather than seeking shortcuts. The compound effect across domains creates what researchers call success spirals, positive feedback loops where advantages in one area reinforce advantages in others. Business success provides resources for better health and relationships. Strong relationships provide support for business challenges. Financial security provides freedom to make long-term decisions. The moat builders. The ultimate goal of patient power is building what Warren Buffett calls economic moats, sustainable competitive advantages that protect your business from attack. These moats aren't built quickly or easily. They require years of patient accumulation and careful cultivation. Network effects create moats when your product becomes more valuable as more people use it. This requires reaching critical mass before competitors can establish their own networks, a process that often takes years of patient growth. Switching costs create moats when customers find it expensive or difficult to change providers. This requires building deep integration with customer workflows and processes, something that develops over many client relationships and iterations. Brand loyalty creates moats when customers prefer your offering, even when alternatives are cheaper or more convenient. This requires consistent delivery of superior value over extended periods, something that can't be manufactured quickly. Scale economies create moats when your size enables cost advantages that smaller competitors can't match. This requires patient investment in infrastructure and capabilities that may not pay off for years. The key insight is that moats aren't built through single decisions or initiatives. They're built through sustained execution of patient strategies over extended periods. They're the compound result of thousands of small decisions that prioritize long-term advantage over short-term gain. The invisible accumulation. The most powerful aspect of patient power is that it's largely invisible to outside observers. While competitors are focused on visible metrics and public milestones, you're accumulating advantages that don't show up in press releases or quarterly reports. You're building institutional knowledge that makes you faster and more efficient over time. You're developing relationships that provide information, opportunities, and support when needed. You're creating systems that enable you to scale without losing quality or increasing costs proportionally. These invisible advantages compound silently until they reach a tipping point where they become visible through superior performance. By then, it's too late for competitors to catch up because they can't compress the time required to build what you've accumulated. This is why patient power is ultimately about playing a different game than your competitors. While they're competing on visible metrics and immediate results, you're building the invisible infrastructure that will determine long-term outcomes. But patience alone isn't enough. Even the strongest moats and most accumulated advantages mean nothing if the market doesn't know they exist. The next chapter reveals how to signal your capabilities without falling into the hype trap, a delicate balance that separates the operators who build lasting value from those who simply build lasting noise. Chapter 7, Outcome Signals. The email was 3 sentences long, no flashy graphics, no bold claims about revolutionary breakthroughs, just a simple message from Satya Nadella to Microsoft's board. Azure revenue grew 93% year over year. Enterprise customers increased 40%. Cloud gross margin improved 8 percentage points. 3 sentences that represented 3 years of silent execution. While competitors were announcing cloud strategies and making grand promises about digital transformation, Microsoft had been quietly building, testing, and scaling their cloud infrastructure. When Nadella finally spoke, he didn't need adjectives. The numbers did the talking. This is the power of outcome signals. When your results are strong enough, your communication can be whisper quiet and still command attention. When your proof is undeniable, your claims become unnecessary. But here's what most entrepreneurs miss. The strength of your signal isn't determined by the volume of your voice. It's determined by the weight of your evidence. The credibility crisis. We live in an age of infinite claims and finite trust. Every entrepreneur promises revolutionary solutions. Every consultant guarantees transformational results. Every agency claims to be the best in their field. The market has become immune to superlatives because superlatives have become meaningless. This creates a paradox. The louder everyone gets, the less anyone is heard. The more people claim, the less anyone believes. The bigger the promises, the smaller the trust. Smart operators recognize this credibility crisis as an opportunity. While competitors are shouting louder, you can whisper with evidence. While they're making bigger claims, you can make smaller ones backed by proof. While they're promising future results, you can demonstrate past ones. The key insight is that markets don't reward the loudest voice. They reward the most credible voice. And credibility isn't built through volume, it's built through verification. Consider how Jason Fried approaches product launches at Basecamp. No countdown timers, no limited time offers, no hyperbolic claims about changing the world. Instead, he simply announces what they've built, shows how it works, and lets existing customers explain why it matters. This understated approach generates more trust and higher conversion rates than flashy launch campaigns because it aligns with how people actually make important decisions. When the stakes are high, people don't want hype, they want proof. The mathematics of trust. Trust operates on mathematical principles that most marketers ignore. Specific numbers are more believable than round numbers. Smaller claims are more credible than larger ones. Negative admissions increase the believability of positive claims. This isn't intuition, it's cognitive science. The human brain has evolved sophisticated mechanisms for detecting deception, and these mechanisms are triggered by patterns that suggest exaggeration or manipulation. Round numbers feel manufactured. When someone claims they increased revenue by exactly 100%, your brain suspects the number has been rounded for effect. When they claim they increased it by 97%, your brain assumes they measured precisely and reported honestly. Large claims trigger skepticism. When someone promises to 10x your business, your brain activates defense mechanisms against obvious exaggeration. When they promise to improve it by 23%, your brain considers the possibility that they've done the math. Unqualified positives sound like sales pitches. When someone claims their solution works for everyone, your brain recognizes the impossibility and discounts everything else they say. When they admit their solution doesn't work for certain situations, your brain increases confidence in their other claims. These principles explain why outcome signals work better than hype signals. When you lead with specific, modest, qualified claims backed by verifiable evidence, you're working with your audience's trust mechanisms rather than against them. The proof architecture. Most businesses approach proof backwards. They start with claims and then look for evidence to support them. This creates what psychologists call confirmation bias, the tendency to cherry-pick data that supports predetermined conclusions while ignoring contradictory evidence. Outcome signals work differently. You start with evidence and let it suggest the claims. You measure first, then message. You prove first, then promote. This approach requires a different kind of discipline. Instead of crafting compelling narratives and then finding supporting data, you collect compelling data and let it tell its own story. Instead of promising future results, you demonstrate past ones. Instead of explaining why something should work, you show that it already has. The proof architecture has 3 layers. The foundation layer consists of objective metrics that can't be gamed or manipulated. These are usually lagging indicators like customer retention, repeat purchase rates, or profit margins. They're hard to fake and easy to verify. The context layer provides just enough background to make the metrics meaningful. This might include the time frame over which results were achieved, the baseline from which improvement was measured, or the conditions under which the work was performed. The validation layer includes third-party verification that the results are real and representative. This might be customer testimonials, case study documentation, or independent audits. The key is providing evidence that comes from sources other than yourself. The minimalist case. The most powerful proof format is what we call the minimalist case, a compressed presentation of evidence that maximizes signal while minimizing noise. Unlike traditional case studies that bury key information in lengthy narratives, minimalist cases lead with outcomes and provide just enough context to make them credible. The format is simple. Start with a before and after number that captures the core transformation. Add 1 sentence of context that explains the situation. Include 1 short quote from the client that validates the result. Finish with 1 screenshot or visual that makes the outcome tangible. For example, client retention increased from 67% to 89% over 6 months. We implemented a systematic onboarding process and quarterly check-in protocol for a B2B software company with 200-plus enterprise accounts. The new system eliminated the guesswork around customer success. We now know exactly when and how to intervene before problems become cancellations. Screenshot of retention dashboard showing the improvement trend. This format works because it respects your audience's time while providing the information they need to evaluate your capabilities. It's specific enough to be credible, but concise enough to be consumed. It focuses on outcomes rather than process, results rather than methods. Most importantly, it's hard to fake. Specific numbers, named clients, and visual evidence create multiple verification points that would be difficult to manufacture convincingly. The quiet launch strategy. Traditional product launches are designed to generate maximum attention in minimum time. They use countdown timers, limited availability, and social proof to create urgency and drive immediate action. This approach works for consumer products and impulse purchases, but it backfires for complex B2B solutions and high-consideration purchases. Quiet launches work differently. Instead of trying to reach everyone at once, you start with a small group of ideal customers and let satisfaction drive expansion. Instead of creating artificial urgency, you focus on demonstrating real value. Instead of promising future benefits, you deliver immediate ones. The quiet launch process begins with insider access. You identify 10 to 20 customers who are perfect fits for your solution and invite them to be early adopters. These aren't beta testers. They're paying customers who get access to a proven solution before it's widely available. The key is choosing insiders who are likely to become advocates. They should have the problem you solve, the budget to pay for solutions, and the influence to recommend you to others. They should also be sophisticated enough to provide meaningful feedback and patient enough to work through early iterations. Once your insiders are achieving measurable results, you document their outcomes and use them as proof points for broader outreach. You're not launching with promises, you're launching with proof. This approach takes longer than traditional launches, but creates more sustainable growth. Instead of a spike followed by a decline, you get steady acceleration driven by word of mouth and referrals. The evidence hierarchy. Not all proof is created equal. Some types of evidence are more persuasive than others, and understanding this hierarchy helps you prioritize what to collect and how to present it. At the bottom of the hierarchy are testimonials and reviews. These are better than no proof at all, but they're easy to fake and often dismissed as cherry-picked. They work best when they're specific, detailed, and include verifiable information about the source. In the middle are case studies and before and after comparisons. These are more credible because they provide context and demonstrate causation rather than just correlation. They work best when they include specific metrics, realistic timeframes, and honest discussions of challenges. At the top are independent validations and third-party audits. These are most credible because they come from sources with no financial incentive to exaggerate. They include academic studies, industry reports, and certifications from recognized authorities. The key is building a portfolio that includes evidence from multiple levels of the hierarchy. Start with what you can control, your own metrics and client outcomes. Then work toward what you can't control, independent validation and third-party recognition. The anti-hype framework. Hype is the enemy of credibility. When you oversell your capabilities, you create expectations that are difficult to meet and skepticism that's hard to overcome. When you undersell them, you create pleasant surprises and build trust for future interactions. The anti-hype framework helps you communicate strength without triggering skepticism. Instead of claiming to be the best, you demonstrate specific advantages. Instead of promising perfect results, you show typical ones. Instead of guaranteeing success, you explain your process and let prospects draw their own conclusions. This approach requires confidence in your actual capabilities. When your results are genuinely strong, you don't need to exaggerate them. When your process is genuinely effective, you don't need to oversell it. When your value is genuinely high, you don't need to inflate it. The anti-hype framework also makes your communication more memorable. In a world of superlatives and exaggerations, modest confidence stands out. When everyone else is shouting, a calm voice gets attention. The retention megaphone. The most powerful marketing tool isn't advertising or content marketing or social media. It's customer retention. When people stay with you longer, buy from you repeatedly, and recommend you to others, they become your most effective sales force. This is why outcome signals focus heavily on retention metrics. Customer lifetime value, repeat purchase rates, and referral percentages are harder to game than acquisition metrics and more predictive of long-term success. High retention rates signal multiple positive attributes. You deliver on your promises, you provide ongoing value, you're easy to work with, and you solve important problems. Low retention rates signal the opposite, regardless of how well you market. The retention megaphone works because it's based on revealed preferences rather than stated ones. People can say anything in surveys or testimonials, but their renewal and referral behavior reveals what they really think about your value. This is why smart operators optimize for retention from day one rather than treating it as an afterthought. They design onboarding processes that ensure early success. They create feedback loops that identify and address problems quickly. They build relationships that extend beyond transactions. When retention is high, marketing becomes easier because you're selling something that people actually want to keep buying. When retention is low, marketing becomes harder because you're constantly fighting against negative word of mouth and skeptical prospects. The proof portfolio. Building credibility requires assembling a portfolio of evidence that demonstrates your capabilities across different dimensions. This isn't about collecting as much proof as possible. It's about collecting the right proof in the right formats for the right audiences. Your proof portfolio should include outcome evidence that shows the results you've achieved, process evidence that explains how you achieve them, and capability evidence that demonstrates your ability to achieve them consistently. Outcome evidence includes metrics, case studies, and testimonials that show what you've accomplished for others. This answers the question, what results can I expect? Process evidence includes methodologies, frameworks, and examples that explain how you work. This answers the question, how do you achieve these results? Capability evidence includes credentials, experience, and resources that demonstrate your ability to execute. This answers the question, why should I believe you can do this for me? The key is matching the right type of evidence to the right stage of the buying process. Early in the process, prospects want outcome evidence to determine if you're worth considering. In the middle, they want process evidence to understand how you work. Near the end, they want capability evidence to reduce their risk of choosing you. The signal concentration. In a noisy world, the most effective communication strategy isn't broadcasting more signals, it's concentrating the signals you do send. When you publish less frequently but with more substance, each communication carries more weight and receives more attention. This principle applies to all forms of business communication. Instead of posting daily updates with modest news, you publish quarterly reports with significant developments. Instead of sending weekly newsletters with mixed content, you send monthly insights with focused value. Instead of speaking at every available conference, you choose carefully and prepare extensively. Signal concentration works because attention is finite and selective. When people know that you only communicate when you have something important to say, they pay more attention when you do communicate. When they know your updates always contain valuable information, they prioritize reading them. This approach requires discipline because it means saying no to opportunities that feel important but don't meet your standards for significance. It means accepting that you'll be less visible in the short term in exchange for being more impactful in the long term. The truth advantage. Perhaps the most important aspect of outcome signals is that they're based on truth rather than spin. When you communicate what actually happened rather than what you wish had happened, you build a reputation for honesty that becomes a competitive advantage. Truth is rare in business communication. Most companies emphasize their successes and minimize their failures. They highlight their strengths and hide their weaknesses. They promise more than they can deliver and explain away shortfalls. This creates an opportunity for operators who are willing to be honest about their capabilities, limitations, and results. When you admit what you can't do, people believe you when you claim what you can do. When you acknowledge your failures, people trust you when you share your successes. The truth advantage compounds over time. Each honest communication builds credibility for the next one. Each accurate prediction increases trust in future ones. Each realistic promise that's kept makes the next promise more believable. But truth alone isn't enough. Even the most honest communication can be ignored if it's not strategically designed to capture and hold attention. The next chapter reveals how to maintain just enough visibility to be chosen without being consumed, a delicate balance that separates the operators who build lasting influence from those who simply build lasting noise. Chapter 8, Understated Presence. For decades, no one knew his name. While other billionaires courted media attention and built personal brands, Amancio Ortega remained invisible. No interviews, no social media presence, no speaking engagements. Most people couldn't pick him out of a lineup, despite the fact that he built one of the world's largest fashion empires. Ortega understood something that most entrepreneurs never grasp. Visibility is not the same as value. While competitors were busy broadcasting their strategies and personalities, he was quietly building Zara into a global phenomenon through operational excellence and customer obsession. His extreme underexposure wasn't shyness or accident, it was strategy. By staying out of the spotlight, he protected his focus, preserved his optionality, and created an aura of mystery that made his rare public appearances carry extraordinary weight. This is the paradox of understated presence. The less you say, the more people listen. The less you appear, the more attention you command. The quieter you become, the louder your results speak. The attention trap. Most entrepreneurs treat attention like it's unlimited. They post daily updates, respond to every comment, engage in every conversation, and wonder why they're exhausted but not profitable. They've fallen into the attention trap, mistaking activity for achievement, visibility for value. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every minute you spend maintaining your audience is a minute not spent serving your clients. Every hour you spend creating content is an hour not spent creating solutions. Every day you spend performing for followers is a day not spent building your business. The modern entrepreneur faces an impossible equation. The platforms that promise to grow your business also consume the time you need to run it. Social media algorithms reward constant posting, but constant posting prevents the deep work that creates competitive advantage. The tools meant to scale your reach often scale your distraction instead. This creates what we call the presence paradox. The more visible you become, the less time you have to do the work that made you worth watching in the first place. The more you feed the content machine, the less you feed your actual business. The more you optimize for engagement, the less you optimize for outcomes. Smart operators recognize this trap and design their presence differently. Instead of maximizing visibility, they optimize for efficiency. Instead of broadcasting constantly, they communicate strategically. Instead of being everywhere, they choose to be somewhere specific with intention and impact. The scarcity principle. Human psychology has a quirk that most entrepreneurs ignore. Scarcity increases perceived value. When something is rare, we assume it's valuable. When something is abundant, we assume it's cheap. This principle applies to your communication just as much as your products. When you post daily, each post carries less weight. When you speak at every conference, each appearance matters less. When you're always available, your availability becomes worthless. You've trained your audience to expect constant access, which paradoxically makes them value that access less. The alternative is strategic scarcity, deliberately limiting your communication frequency to increase its impact. When people know you only speak when you have something important to say, they pay attention when you speak. When they know your updates always contain valuable insights, they prioritize reading them. Consider the difference between two consultants. The first posts daily insights, shares behind-the-scenes content, and engages in industry discussions across multiple platforms. The second publishes a quarterly report with significant client results and strategic observations. Both are visible, but their visibility creates different perceptions. The first consultant appears busy and engaged, but not necessarily successful or selective. Their constant communication suggests they have time to spare, which implies their services aren't in high demand. The second consultant appears focused and successful. Their rare communication suggests they're too busy with important work to engage in casual conversation. This isn't about being antisocial or difficult to reach. It's about being intentional with your communication so that each interaction carries maximum weight and creates maximum value. The channel consolidation. Most entrepreneurs spread themselves across too many platforms, diluting their impact and fragmenting their focus. They maintain profiles on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and whatever new platform promises to be the next big thing. This platform proliferation creates multiple problems. First, it multiplies your workload without multiplying your results. Each platform has its own content requirements, engagement expectations, and algorithmic demands. Maintaining quality presence across multiple channels requires more time than most entrepreneurs can afford to spend on communication. Second, it dilutes your message. Different platforms reward different types of content, which often leads to inconsistent messaging and confused positioning. Your LinkedIn content emphasizes professional expertise, while your Instagram content shows personal lifestyle, creating cognitive dissonance for people who follow you on both. Third, it fragments your audience. Instead of building a concentrated community in one place, you're building scattered audiences across multiple platforms. This makes it harder to develop deep relationships and reduces the compound effect of your communication efforts. The solution is channel consolidation, choosing one primary platform and one secondary platform, then sunsetting everything else. This isn't about limiting your reach, it's about concentrating your impact. Your primary channel should be where your ideal clients spend time and where you can create the most value with the least effort. This might be LinkedIn for B2B services, YouTube for educational content, or email for direct communication. The key is choosing based on strategic fit rather than personal preference or current trends. Your secondary channel should complement your primary channel and serve a different function. If your primary channel is for thought leadership, your secondary might be for relationship building. If your primary is for broad reach, your secondary might be for deep engagement. Everything else should be eliminated or automated. This doesn't mean disappearing from other platforms entirely. It means not actively creating content for them. You might maintain profiles for brand protection or use scheduling tools to repurpose content, but you don't invest creative energy in platforms that don't serve your strategic objectives. The update rhythm. Most entrepreneurs communicate reactively, posting when they feel inspired, sharing when something interesting happens, responding when they have time. This reactive approach creates inconsistent messaging and unpredictable value for your audience. Understated presence requires a proactive communication rhythm that's predictable for your audience, but sustainable for you. This might mean monthly insights instead of daily posts, quarterly reports instead of weekly updates, or annual summaries instead of constant commentary. The key is creating a rhythm that you can maintain without sacrificing the work that creates the value you're communicating about. If creating content prevents you from creating results, you're optimizing for the wrong metric. Your rhythm should also match your business cycle and client expectations. If you're in a project-based business with quarterly deliverables, quarterly updates make sense. If you're in a relationship-based business with annual contracts, annual summaries might be sufficient. The content of each update should be substantial enough to justify the wait. Instead of sharing incremental progress or minor insights, you're sharing significant developments and major learnings. Each communication should feel like an event rather than just another post in the feed. This approach requires patience and discipline. You'll watch competitors post daily while you stay quiet. You'll see trending topics that you could comment on but choose not to. You'll feel pressure to increase your frequency when growth feels slow. But the discipline of understated presence pays dividends in attention quality and time preservation. The decibel budget. Just as you have a financial budget that controls spending, you need a decibel budget that controls communication. This isn't about limiting your impact. It's about maximizing your efficiency by setting clear boundaries on how much time and energy you invest in outward communication. Your decibel budget should include all forms of external communication: content creation, social media engagement, speaking opportunities, podcast appearances, and networking events. The goal is ensuring that communication supports your business rather than consuming it. A reasonable decibel budget for most entrepreneurs is 4 hours per week maximum. This includes creating content, responding to comments, engaging with others' content, and participating in online discussions. Everything beyond this budget should be declined or delegated. This constraint forces prioritization. When you only have 4 hours per week for communication, you become selective about how you use them. You focus on high-impact activities and eliminate low-value busy work. You create less content but make it more valuable. You engage in fewer conversations but make them more meaningful. The decibel budget also protects your deep work time. By batching all communication into a designated window, perhaps Friday afternoons, you prevent it from fragmenting your focus throughout the week. You can engage fully during your communication time and focus completely during your creation time. The FAQ strategy. One of the biggest drains on your communication budget is answering repetitive questions. Prospects ask about your process, pricing, and availability. Clients ask about timelines, deliverables, and next steps. Partners ask about capabilities, capacity, and collaboration opportunities. Most entrepreneurs answer these questions individually, creating a massive time sink that scales with their visibility. The more people know about you, the more questions you receive. The more questions you receive, the less time you have for the work that makes you worth knowing about. The FAQ strategy solves this problem by creating a comprehensive resource that answers 80% of common questions before they're asked. This isn't a traditional FAQ page buried in your website footer. It's a strategic communication tool that reduces your response burden while improving your positioning. Your FAQ should address the questions you get most frequently, but it should also address the questions you want people to ask. Instead of just answering, "What do you charge?" you might explain your value-based pricing philosophy. Instead of just answering, "How long does it take?" you might explain your quality-first approach to project management. The FAQ becomes a filter that qualifies prospects while educating them. People who read it thoroughly are more likely to be good fits. People who skip it and ask answered questions reveal themselves as poor fits. This saves time on both sides and improves the quality of your conversations. The template system. Even with an FAQ strategy, you'll still need to respond to individual inquiries. The template system helps you do this efficiently without sacrificing personalization or quality. Templates aren't form letters. They're frameworks that provide structure while allowing for customization. You might have templates for initial inquiries, project proposals, status updates, and follow-up communications. Each template includes the key information that needs to be communicated, but leaves room for specific details and personal touches. The key is personalizing the beginning and end of each template while using standardized language for the middle sections. This creates the efficiency of automation with the warmth of personal communication. For example, your inquiry response template might start with a personalized greeting and reference to their specific situation, include standardized information about your process and next steps, and end with a personalized note about why you're interested in working with them. Templates also ensure consistency in your messaging. When you're responding to multiple inquiries per day, it's easy to give different information or emphasize different points. Templates help you communicate your value proposition consistently while adapting to individual circumstances. The noise-to-work ratio. The most important metric for understated presence is your noise-to-work ratio, the relationship between time spent communicating about your work and time spent actually doing it. This ratio should heavily favor work over noise. A healthy ratio might be 10-1 or even 20-1. For every hour you spend communicating, you spend 10 to 20 hours creating value for clients. This ensures that your communication is based on substantial work rather than manufactured content. Most entrepreneurs have inverted ratios. They spend more time talking about their work than doing it, more time creating content than creating solutions, more time building their personal brand than building their business capabilities. Tracking your noise-to-work ratio creates awareness of how you're actually spending your time versus how you think you're spending it. It also creates accountability for maintaining the discipline of understated presence when the temptation to increase communication frequency becomes strong. The ratio should be measured monthly to smooth out weekly variations. Some weeks you might spend more time on communication due to speaking engagements or content creation. Other weeks you might spend no time on communication due to client deadlines or deep work projects. The monthly view provides a more accurate picture of your overall balance. The intrigue factor. Understated presence creates something that constant communication cannot: intrigue. When people know everything about you, there's no mystery. When they know nothing, there's no interest. But when they know just enough to be curious, they pay attention. This intrigue factor is particularly powerful in B2B markets, where decision makers are sophisticated and skeptical. They're tired of being sold to constantly and appreciate professionals who let their work speak for itself. Intrigue isn't about being mysterious for its own sake. It's about being selective with what you share and when you share it. You might share results without explaining methods. You might mention clients without naming them. You might reference projects without detailing processes. This selective sharing creates what psychologists call information gaps, the space between what people know and what they want to know. These gaps create curiosity, and curiosity creates engagement. People are more likely to pay attention to someone who makes them curious than someone who tells them everything up front. The intrigue factor also makes your rare communications more impactful. When you do share detailed insights or behind-the-scenes information, it feels like privileged access rather than routine content. This increases the perceived value of your communication and strengthens relationships with your audience. The quality compound. When you communicate less frequently but with higher quality, you create a compound effect that benefits both your audience and your business. Your audience receives more value per communication, which increases their attention and engagement. Your business receives more qualified leads and stronger relationships, which improves conversion rates and client satisfaction. This quality compound is the opposite of the quantity trap that most entrepreneurs fall into. Instead of trying to stay top of mind through constant communication, you earn mind share through valuable communication. Instead of competing for attention through volume, you command attention through substance. The compound effect accelerates over time. Each high-quality communication builds your reputation for providing value. Each valuable interaction increases the likelihood that people will pay attention to your next communication. Each meaningful engagement strengthens relationships that lead to referrals and repeat business. This creates a virtuous cycle where less communication leads to more business, which provides more material for valuable communication, which leads to even more business. The cycle is self-reinforcing and sustainable because it's based on creating value rather than consuming attention. The presence paradox. The ultimate goal of understated presence is creating what we call the presence paradox, being so selective with your communication that people pay more attention when you do communicate. This paradox is the hallmark of true influence, the ability to command attention without demanding it. The presence paradox manifests in several ways. Your rare posts receive higher engagement than frequent posters' regular content. Your speaking opportunities become more valuable because they're scarce. Your opinions carry more weight because you don't share them casually. This paradox is particularly powerful in professional services where expertise and judgment are the primary value propositions. When you demonstrate restraint in your communication, you signal confidence in your capabilities. When you're selective with your insights, you suggest that your thinking is valuable enough to be rationed. The presence paradox also creates operational benefits. You spend less time on communication but achieve better results. You have more time for client work but generate more leads. You're less visible but more influential. The sustainable strategy. Understated presence isn't just a communication strategy, it's a sustainable approach to building influence without burning out. When you're not constantly feeding the content machine, you have more energy for the work that actually creates value. When you're not always performing for an audience, you can focus on performing for clients. This sustainability is crucial for long-term success. Most entrepreneurs who build their businesses on constant communication eventually hit a wall where they can't maintain the pace. They burn out, their quality declines, or they hire teams to maintain their presence, which dilutes their authenticity. Understated presence scales differently. As your reputation grows, your rare communications become more valuable, not more demanding. As your business expands, you can maintain the same communication rhythm while serving more clients. As your expertise deepens, your insights become more concentrated rather than more frequent. The sustainable strategy also protects your optionality. When you're not locked into daily posting schedules or constant engagement expectations, you can adapt your communication to changing circumstances. You can go quiet during busy periods without disappointing your audience. You can increase communication when you have something important to share without feeling like you're breaking character. But even the most carefully crafted presence strategy means nothing if you can't maintain it consistently over time. The final chapter reveals how to lock in these quiet victory habits so they become automatic rather than effortful, creating a system that ensures your hard-won advantages compound rather than decay. Chapter 9. Keep winning. Warren Buffett's office in Omaha is unremarkable. No fancy technology, no wall of awards, no evidence of the empire he's built through 8 decades of quiet compounding. Just books, newspapers, and a simple desk where he makes decisions that move billions of dollars with the calm deliberation of someone choosing what to have for lunch. This ordinariness is the point. While other billionaires build monuments to their success, Buffett has built something more valuable, a system so elegant and automatic that extraordinary results emerge from seemingly mundane habits. He reads, he thinks, he waits, he acts when the odds are overwhelmingly in his favor. Then he repeats. This is what mastery looks like. Not dramatic gestures or heroic efforts, but the disciplined repetition of proven principles until excellence becomes inevitable rather than accidental. You've learned those principles throughout this book. Now comes the most important part, making them permanent. The quiet revolution. You now possess something most entrepreneurs never develop. A complete system for creating sustainable competitive advantage without the noise, drama, and burnout that destroys most promising ventures. This isn't just a collection of tactics, it's a philosophy that transforms how you think about work, success, and the relationship between effort and outcomes. The quiet revolution begins with a simple recognition. In a world obsessed with speed, visibility, and constant action, the greatest advantage belongs to those who can think clearly, move deliberately, and execute consistently over extended periods. While others exhaust themselves chasing the latest trends and fighting for attention, you'll be building assets that compound quietly in the background. Strategic calm gave you the foundation, the ability to maintain optimal cognitive performance regardless of external pressures. This isn't just about feeling better. It's about thinking better, deciding better, and executing better when it matters most. When your competitors are reactive and scattered, you'll be responsive and focused. Deep work provided the fortress, protected time where your best thinking can emerge without interference. This isn't luxury, it's necessity. In an attention economy, the ability to focus deeply for extended periods is becoming the ultimate competitive advantage. While others fragment their attention across dozens of inputs, you'll be creating assets that matter. Silent execution taught you to build, test, and iterate without the performance pressure that distorts most development processes. This isn't about secrecy for its own sake. It's about optimizing for truth rather than applause. While others are managing perceptions, you'll be improving realities. Invisible systems showed you how to make excellence automatic rather than heroic. This isn't about bureaucracy, it's about leverage. When good outcomes are built into your processes rather than dependent on individual brilliance, you can scale without losing quality or increasing stress proportionally. Patient power revealed the compound advantage of delaying recognition until your moat exists. This isn't about being invisible forever. It's about being strategic about when and how you become visible. While others burn out from premature exposure, you'll be building defensible advantages that become more valuable over time. Outcome signals taught you to speak with evidence rather than adjectives. This isn't about being modest, it's about being credible. In a world of infinite claims and finite trust, the ability to demonstrate rather than declare creates sustainable positioning advantages. Understated Presence showed you how to be seen just enough to be chosen without being consumed by audience maintenance. This isn't about limiting your reach, it's about maximizing your impact per unit of effort. While others exhaust themselves feeding the content machine, you'll be building relationships that compound. Together, these principles create what we call the quiet advantage, the ability to outperform competitors not through superior resources or market timing, but through superior systems and sustained execution. The compound life. The principles in this book don't just improve your business, they transform every domain of your life. The same discipline that creates strategic calm in work creates emotional stability in relationships. The same focus that protects deep work time creates presence in personal interactions. The same patience that builds business moats builds financial wealth through long-term investing. This cross-domain compounding is where the real magic happens. When you're calm and focused at work, you have more energy for family relationships. When your business systems are running smoothly, you have more mental space for personal growth. When your communication is efficient and effective, you have more time for the activities that truly matter to you. The quiet advantage also attracts alignment in ways that noise never can. Calm people gravitate toward other calm people. Focused individuals respect others who protect their time and attention. Patient operators appreciate those who think in longer time horizons. The principles that create business success also create the conditions for deeper, more meaningful relationships. Consider how this plays out in practice. When you're not constantly stressed about business operations, you're more present with your family. When you're not scattered across multiple priorities, you can give full attention to the people and projects that matter most. When you're not performing for an audience, you can be authentic in your personal relationships. The compound effect accelerates over time. Each domain reinforces the others. Business success provides resources for better health and relationships. Strong relationships provide support during business challenges. Financial security provides freedom to make long-term decisions. Personal growth provides wisdom for business strategy. This is the ultimate promise of quiet victory. Not just better business results, but a better life. Not just more money, but more meaning. Not just greater success, but greater satisfaction. The new capabilities. By implementing these principles, you'll develop capabilities that most entrepreneurs never achieve. You'll be able to protect 12 to 20 hours of deep work time weekly without guilt or interruption. This isn't just about productivity. It's about accessing the cognitive states where breakthrough insights and innovative solutions emerge. You'll ship 1 to 2 meaningful assets per month with predictable reliability. This isn't just about output. It's about building the kind of consistent value creation that compounds into sustainable competitive advantage. While competitors are inconsistent and unpredictable, you'll be building a reputation for reliable excellence. You'll run weekly scorecards that track what actually matters, making decisions calmly and quickly based on objective data rather than emotional reactions. This isn't just about measurement. It's about creating feedback loops that enable continuous improvement without the drama of crisis management. You'll say no to opportunities that don't fit your strategic objectives without burning bridges or creating conflict. This isn't just about boundaries. It's about the confidence that comes from knowing exactly what you're building and why. When you're clear on your direction, Declining distractions becomes easy rather than agonizing. Perhaps most importantly, you'll develop what we call strategic patience, the ability to delay gratification in service of larger objectives. This isn't just about business, it's about life. The same patience that builds business moats builds personal wealth, deep relationships, and meaningful achievements in every domain. The effortless inevitability. The most remarkable aspect of these principles is how they create what feels like effortless inevitability. As your systems mature and your habits solidify, success stops feeling like something you have to chase and starts feeling like something that emerges naturally from your way of operating. This happens because each principle reinforces the others in a virtuous cycle. Strategic calm enables deeper focus. Deep focus creates better systems. Better systems produce stronger outcomes. Stronger outcomes build greater patience. Greater patience enables more strategic communication. More strategic communication attracts better opportunities. Better opportunities provide more resources for calm, focus, and system building. The flywheel effect becomes self-reinforcing. Each revolution requires less effort while producing greater results. What once felt difficult becomes automatic. What once required willpower becomes preference. What once seemed impossible becomes inevitable. This is the difference between working hard and working smart. Working hard means applying more effort to get better results. Working smart means building systems that produce better results with less effort over time. The principles in this book are fundamentally about working smart, creating leverage that compounds rather than just accumulates. Warren Buffett exemplifies this effortless inevitability. His investment returns seem magical to outside observers, but they're actually the predictable result of applying proven principles consistently over decades. He doesn't work harder than other investors. He works within a system that makes good decisions easier and bad decisions harder. You can achieve the same effortless inevitability in your domain, not through superior talent or lucky breaks, but through superior systems and sustained execution. The magic isn't in the individual decisions. It's in the framework that makes good decisions automatic. The Buffett Blueprint. Warren Buffett's career provides the ultimate case study in quiet victory. For over 6 decades, he's generated extraordinary returns, not through dramatic trades or market timing, but through patient application of simple principles. His approach embodies every concept in this book. Strategic calm. Buffett maintains emotional equilibrium during market panics and euphoria alike. While others react to short-term volatility, he focuses on long-term value creation. His famous advice to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful is strategic calm in action. Deep work. Buffett spends most of his time reading and thinking, protected from the distractions that fragment most executives' attention. His Omaha headquarters is deliberately isolated from Wall Street's noise, enabling the deep analysis that creates investment edge. Silent execution. Buffett researches investments privately and acts decisively when opportunities arise. He doesn't announce his intentions or seek validation from others. He builds positions quietly and speaks only after results are established. Invisible systems. Berkshire Hathaway operates through decentralized systems that enable autonomous decision-making by subsidiary managers. Buffett doesn't micromanage. He creates frameworks that align incentives and enable excellent outcomes without his direct involvement. Patient power. Buffett's holding periods are measured in decades, not quarters. He's willing to wait years for the right opportunities and hold investments through temporary setbacks. His patience enables him to capitalize on others' impatience. Outcome signals. Buffett's annual letters focus on facts, figures, and lessons learned rather than predictions or promises. He communicates what happened, not what might happen. His credibility comes from accurate reporting of results over time. Understated presence. Despite being one of the world's most successful investors, Buffett maintains a modest public profile. He speaks when he has something valuable to say, not to maintain visibility. His rare communications carry extraordinary weight because of their scarcity and substance. The result? Berkshire Hathaway's stock has compounded at nearly 20% annually for 6 decades, turning a $10,000 investment in 1965 into over $300 million today. This isn't luck or genius. It's the inevitable result of applying proven principles consistently over time. Your first move. The journey to quiet victory begins with a single decision, choosing systems over heroics, patience over pressure, substance over style. But knowing what to do isn't the same as doing it. The gap between understanding and implementation is where most good intentions die. Your first move should be the smallest possible step that creates momentum toward your larger objectives. This week, block 3 90-minute sessions in your calendar for deep work. Not tomorrow, not next month, this week. Treat these blocks as seriously as your most important client meetings, because they are your most important client meetings. Your meeting with your future self. During these sessions, choose one project that matters and write a 1-sentence scope statement that defines exactly what you'll accomplish. This isn't a vague goal like work on the proposal. It's a specific, finishable outcome like complete the executive summary with 3 key benefits and supporting data. Then run a 7-day silent execution loop. Build the smallest version that can be meaningfully tested. Test it with 3 to 5 qualified people who can provide honest feedback. Measure the results against your success criteria. Iterate based on what you learn. Document what works. Finally, create a 3-metric private scorecard that tracks what actually matters in your business. Not vanity metrics like website traffic or social media followers, but outcome metrics like customer retention, profit margin, or cycle time. Spend 15 minutes every Friday reviewing these numbers and identifying one improvement for the following week. These aren't dramatic changes, they're systematic ones. They create the foundation for everything else that follows. Most importantly, they prove to yourself that these principles work in your specific situation with your specific constraints. The moment of truth. You're at a crossroads. You can return to the chaos of reactive entrepreneurship, chasing every opportunity, responding to every distraction, optimizing for applause rather than assets. Or you can choose the path of quiet victory, building systematically, executing patiently, and letting your results speak louder than your words ever could. The choice seems obvious, but it's not easy. The quiet path requires discipline when others are taking shortcuts. It requires patience when others are promising instant results. It requires confidence when others are seeking validation. It requires thinking in years when others are thinking in quarters. But here's what makes the choice worthwhile. The quiet path is the only one that leads to sustainable competitive advantage. Everything else is temporary. Market timing, lucky breaks, superior resources. These advantages can be copied, competed away, or simply run out. But the advantages created through systematic execution compound over time and become increasingly difficult to replicate. The entrepreneurs who choose this path don't just build better businesses, they build better lives. They work from a place of calm rather than chaos. They create value rather than just capturing it. They build relationships rather than just networks. They develop capabilities rather than just collecting credentials. Most importantly, they create freedom, the freedom to choose their clients, their projects, and their priorities. The freedom to say no to opportunities that don't align with their objectives. The freedom to work on what matters rather than what screams. The freedom to build something that lasts rather than something that just pays the bills. The quiet victory. The ultimate goal isn't just business success. It's the kind of success that enhances rather than diminishes your life. The kind that creates options rather than obligations. The kind that builds wealth in all its forms: financial, relational, intellectual, and spiritual. This is what quiet victory looks like. Waking up to automated revenue streams that reflect years of patient system building. Leading a team that executes excellently without constant supervision because you've built processes that make good outcomes inevitable. Attracting opportunities that align with your objectives because your reputation for delivery precedes you. It's having the confidence to turn down projects that don't fit your strategic direction because you know better ones are coming. It's being able to take time off without worrying about your business because your systems continue running in your absence. It's building something that could operate and grow without you while choosing to remain involved because you love the work. It's the respect of peers who recognize your consistent excellence. It's the trust of clients who know you'll deliver what you promise. It's the satisfaction of building something meaningful rather than just profitable. Most importantly, it's the peace that comes from knowing you're building on solid foundations rather than shifting sands. When your success is based on systematic execution rather than lucky breaks, you can sleep well knowing that tomorrow's results are largely determined by today's systems. The compound future. The principles in this book aren't just about achieving success, they're about sustaining it. They create what economists call increasing returns, the phenomenon where advantages compound over time rather than diminishing. Each system you build makes the next one easier. Each standard you establish reinforces the others. Each quiet victory creates the foundation for larger ones. This compounding effect accelerates as your reputation for reliable excellence spreads. Clients seek you out rather than you seeking them. Partners propose collaborations rather than you pitching them. Opportunities present themselves rather than you hunting for them. The market begins to work for you rather than against you. The compound future also includes the people you'll attract and develop. When you operate from principles rather than expedience, you attract others who share those values. When you build systems rather than dependencies, you develop team members who can think and act independently. When you prioritize long-term value over short-term gains, you create a culture that sustains itself. Your influence extends beyond your immediate business to your industry, your community, and your family. The calm you cultivate spreads to those around you. The systems you build become templates for others. The patience you demonstrate gives others permission to think long-term. The quiet victory you achieve shows others what's possible when you choose substance over style. The final choice. You have everything you need to begin. The principles are proven, the methods are practical, the examples are real. The only question remaining is whether you'll choose to apply them consistently over time. This choice will define not just your business trajectory, but your life trajectory. Will you join the majority who chase every trend, react to every crisis, and exhaust themselves in pursuit of external validation? Or will you join the minority who build systematically, execute patiently, and let their results create their reputation? The choice between noise and signal, between chaos and calm, between performing and producing, between working hard in public for temporary applause or working hard in silence for permanent results. Choose quiet over chaos. Choose shipping over shouting. Choose truth over theater. Choose systems over heroics. Choose patience over pressure. Choose substance over style. Start small today. Block those 3 deep work sessions. Write that 1-sentence scope. Create that simple scorecard. Take the first step on the path that leads to quiet victory. The market is waiting for what you'll build when you stop talking and start executing. Your future self is waiting for the systems you'll create when you choose discipline over distraction. Your family is waiting for the person you'll become when you choose calm over chaos. The time for preparation is over. The time for execution has begun. Work hard in silence. Let your results do the talking. Keep winning. The quiet revolution starts now.